All right, I'm going to call to order the March 27th meeting of the Arlington Redevelopment Board. Thank you all for coming. There's a loud echo in this room, so please keep any comments to yourself. Just a little bit loud in here as we're trying to discuss. Tonight we're going to be deliberating the articles to move forward to town meeting. We're going to do things in not in order. I think the most important thing to do is to begin with Article 16 as amended by Steve Revelak. So Steve, if you could come up, and not at the table, but in the front row, just available for questioning as we move through this, because 16 really decides how the other Articles 6 through 14 are going to move after this. We'll tackle much of the density and dimensional requirements that have been proposed. We will then move through each of those, but as board members, feel free to discuss the pros and cons of anything from 6 through 14, although keep in mind that 14 is separate as it's an administrative change. This relates to the same slate of articles here. So, all right, I'm going to open it up with 16 as amended by Steve Revelak. Steve, I know you did this the other night, but could you give us a brief overview of what 16 does and allows and the relief it gives for some of these other articles that we discussed, and then we'll get into a discussion with the board.
Okay, so 16 was originally proposed as just a change to the IZ required, the percentage of inclusionary units required under Section 8.2. So where we currently have a 15% inclusionary requirements at 6 units or more, I have proposed adding 20 at 20%. Now, there's during earlier meetings, the board had expressed a feeling that some of the multifamily articles would be the provisions would be better positioned as density bonuses rather than just general provisions. So I worked with the planning directors to modify my articles along those lines. So basically, I would summarize the amended Article 16 as follows. So for we are keeping the requirement of 15% affordable units for projects of 6 units or more. For projects, we are adding a tier of 20% at 20 or more units. For projects where the developer includes only the required number of affordable units, at least one, they will not receive a density bonus. So the existing bylaw will apply if they just meet the minimum requirements. If the developer produces a number of inclusionary units in excess of what the bylaw requires, then they will be afforded the density bonus. And finally, for the last provision is that the density bonus would be available in smaller projects, 4 and 5 units, things that may not, on smaller lots or that may not be amenable, where 6 units may not be feasible. But the goal there is to allow some more housing diversity in this case, meaning variety of housing types and a variety of different price points, essentially to satisfy the need for something that is not a single or 2-family home.
So this tackles not only issues of affordable housing and market, what would typically be considered high-end housing, we were discussed here, but it goes at offering a variety of options here.
Correct.
And so we can get to some of the mid-range, mid-market rate that's really lacking in town.
Yes.
So far. Good. All right. Jean, begin with you. We'll work.
Do you want me to go
around the table.
through the entire 16? And
Go
make
ahead.
comments?
Let's keep typos and clerical comments separately. We can submit those to staff for correction unless there's a material change. That goes for everyone, but let's go through the substantive
So let me
discussion.
start by thanking the staff and Steve for doing this. I think having the opportunities for increased density as density bonuses for more affordable housing is definitely the way to go here. Density bonuses are the #1 way throughout the United States in which incentive zoning for affordable housing is put into place. So we're basically catching up with a lot of the United States by doing this. I agree with Steve's initial filing to increase the affordability percentage to 20% with 20 units or more. I think that makes sense. It's a smart thing to do. So let me start with 8.2.4C. It says in case of a multi-family development, 4, 5, 6, 7 districts, or a mixed-use development, any of the B districts. I think that misses some potential units and buildings that we would want to capture under this. My suggestion would be for multifamily and mixed-use development in any R, B, MU, PUD, I, or T district where applicable, and where more than the required number of affordable units is set forth in section 8.2.3A will be provided the following, and then the rest of that sentence. Because I think this omits a lot of districts where we could have these units. And I took a look at the tables, and the tables allow multifamily with special permits in all those other districts. So I think if we don't put them in here, we're excluding a large number. So I would like to have that change made. I'll just say that again. For multifamily and mixed-use development in any RB, MU, PUD, I, or T district where applicable, and where more than the required number of affordable units as set forth in section 8.2.3A will be provided the following, and then you had the following density, etc. So that would be my suggestion for that. I can email you these afterward,
Yep.
Erin.
I'm also going to just choose a different color
Yeah.
so that.
I just want to respond while you're doing that. if
Go ahead,
that's okay.
Right.
We provided to the moderator the amendments as they are right now.
Right.
I believe, however, that what you are suggesting would still be within scope of this article.
I think so.
Because it's simply adding districts, and there were no districts noted in the original article.
Right.
So I believe
I
that
think
would
it's
still
just
be
I think it's zoning
acceptable.
bylaw.
The issue is about increasing affordability, so therefore it would be acceptable from that standard.
Yep. Next comment I have is,
So before you move on, does anybody else have comments on that? I think I'm in agreement with that idea.
I agree with the idea. My question was in the same sentence, where the trigger is more than the required number of affordable units. Does that mean one more, or do we want to be more specific?
it just
in that?
could mean one more, but it could be more than one more.
Well, what are the pros and cons of being more specific or specifying a percentage more or something like that, rather than just giving them the opportunity because we're saying if you do just one more unit than you're required, we're opening up this whole world of opportunity to you. And maybe it's enough that they're doing one more unit. I'm just not sure, and I wanted to talk about whether we should be more precise about that.
So are you suggesting that we add a sliding scale to this thing here, or what? I'm a little confused. Also, I'm a little confused on your last statement, Steve, okay? But I want to finish with Dave's question first. So you're saying 1 to 6, there is no,
1 to 5.
sorry, my mistake. 1 to 5, there is no inclusionary.
The same as it is now.
Once you go to 6, you have to include one inclusionary for 15%. Okay, and then from 6 to 19, that is, it's 15%. Then from 20% on, it is 20% inclusionary. So it's not one more, it's percentage. Is that what we're talking about here? Or am I missing what you're saying here?
Well, I wasn't reading it as if you were willing to jump up to the next tier. I was reading it as if the tier you were in required you to, say, provide one affordable unit and you chose to provide two, which is more than the required one, then would that give you all the density bonuses and you could then perhaps build a much larger building? Although then you would have to recalculate everything because then you'd have a different number of units. And what would that do?
I'm still not following you because right now you're saying 15% is 15%, 20% is 20%. And let's say I built a building that's 21 units, hypothetically. 20% of those units would be affordable.
But if you want the density bonus, it has to be 20% plus 1.
Oh, so you're adding one more above it.
If you want to take advantage of any of these density options, it would be, if you're between 6 and 19, it would be 15% plus 1. If you're 20 units or more, it would be 20% plus 1.
So you're adding plus one
Plus 1.
to every single large project.
That's
So you can get the density bonus.
right. That's the exchange. That's how these things work.
So you're just increasing the amount of inclusionary, just using a different formula for the density bonus.
If you want them, if you don't want the density, you use the old or the current numbers. If you want any of the density things, then you have to add one more affordable unit. And what David is saying is one the right number.
Yeah, that's my question.
So then I go back to the old, what we were saying before, is you're going to force a bunch of buildings that are going to stay with the 15% requirement and say there'll be a bunch of 6 unit buildings that will capture only 50%, or let's say there'll be a bunch of 19 unit buildings that will capture 15%, then we'll get the 15% inclusionary so they can get the density bonus. Anything above that has a higher mark to it, which means 20% plus 1. That's what you're saying. Steve?
That's, yes.
Yes. So that's the quid pro quo. If you'd like to build higher than otherwise allowed, if you'd like different setbacks than otherwise allowed, you need to add at least one affordable unit. That's how density bonuses work. So that's the bonus.
No, I
Yeah.
clearly understand the density bonuses. I'm just running through the math right now and see how's that really work out. Okay. I mean,
So, if I might,
Go ahead.
take 483 Summer Street, which is where we have one affordable unit.
Mhm.
It's 9 units, I believe, and then there's commercial, the office, rather. So in that case, they would be 15% plus 1. Plus, they could have accessed other bonuses potentially if they had added one more unit. I'm just giving a
yeah, I know what I'm
recent
saying.
example.
Otherwise, they don't get any density bonus.
Otherwise, they build.
Otherwise, they build according to current zone bylaw.
So, but what we're saying here is we're encouraging smaller projects. I don't know how to phrase it right now, but I just, it feels like it's, I'm willing to listen, but I think it's putting an undue burden on some of the larger projects that could be seen here that could increase the housing stock, but put too much of a burden on it, and I'm not sure. And I wouldn't mind talking a little bit more about this because
So I don't necessarily think it does increase the burden on a developer. And it doesn't do anything differently than currently exists unless they want to access some of the bonuses that are being provided as far as step backs and converting open space and, excuse me, getting to density and dimensional requirements. They can build whatever they can build now as the bylaw stands. So Summer Street, which was built under the 87 Mass Ave, which was built under the old zoning bylaw, would be in its place as it is now. 483 Summer would be in its place as it is now. But say the off chance a larger lot comes up where it's appropriate to build more than a handful of units, as opposed to infill development, which is what we're likely to see for the most part across the board. Here we get to something like, say, the Walgreens site, where you could have a larger development to trigger all of the various bonuses that were out there. We would require a developer at that point to build additional affordable units. Otherwise, they could just analyze the spot as it is now under the existing zoning and build whatever's allowed.
But clearly, what the whole gist of this zoning changes here is to encourage additional development.
It's
Okay.
two things I would say, but maybe we need to have this discussion. It's to encourage additional development that will end up with more residential units and better commercial space. That's one. And second is to get more affordable units as a result of that. And some of the more affordability, I hope, will be that as people say, oh, I can build a larger building, then all of a sudden the inclusionary zoning kicks in. Plus, they build the one extra affordable unit. And so I think those are really the two aims. Get more residential, better commercial, aim number one, and aim number two, more affordable units than we would otherwise get. And I think the combination of the density bonus and some of the changes we would make to density would get us those.
I'm just worried that in that attempt to do that, what you just said, okay, we lose our diversity of unit types. Because I know that if you have one affordable unit, you're going to have to develop 3 or 4 market rate units to supplement that affordable unit. So if you put a larger burden on that development to do more affordable units, it drives the price of the affordable units higher.
The non-affordable units.
The market rate units
units.
higher.
Right.
So now you get a diversity of very expensive units, very rich people living in town, and a few affordable units. And you've left out the working class, the middle class.
Well, you and I had this discussion.
Yes, we did, and I'm willing to talk about it. That's why I want to do this.
You and I had this discussion before, and I guess a couple of things. One is, I think next year, for next year's town meeting, we should look at how we can diversify the income levels. But I don't think we can do that this year because it's too late, it's not set up to do that. The second thing that you and I discussed, and this gets back to your point, David, is, respecting Ken's expertise about this, 1 unit is probably the most extra unit that we're going to get in the
And
current.
any more would be too much.
Any
of a
more
burden.
would be too much.
Any more.
And even
is overly
one
burdensome.
might be too much.
But
is
but
what
more than.
I'm not saying it might be not too much. It will just add more cost to the market rate units because they have to subsidize more now, and it makes that price higher. So it makes it even harder for a working class person to get to that.
But I think we're seeing that kind of price pressure right now without these density bonuses.
And I'm just, and I don't want to exacerbate that. That's why I'm a little, I don't know.
So the other thing we did based on the discussion you and I had
Yes.
a couple of weeks ago is we said we're going to exclude 1 to 5 unit buildings from the need to have affordable. Because you felt like that's where sort of the point was, that we couldn't require any extra units. So I think that's how we tried to create a package
Okay.
that dealt with my concerns and your concerns.
I'm just putting it on the table to
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about right here because I think that's a fair thing to talk about because I don't want to get so caught up on affordable. I'm all for it, but I don't want to lose sight of the workforce housing, the middle income people. That this is what Arlington was, and it's sort of drifting away from that right now.
Me neither, and I think that's what we need to do for next year.
And I think we need to address that, and I'm not sure, I just want to look at this and say, is this hurting that cause? That's all I want to put on the table, and
Or is it providing a structure that we can build upon?
I don't know. I mean, it's going to take a little more time to look in that, okay? So, I'm going to speak out alternative.
Go ahead.
I mean, if the rest of the board feels like this inclusionary plus thing that Steve has is a fair way of addressing it, I'll go along with the board with the recommendation that we will look at this again next year to see if we can make this more equitable, okay? And say, look, I don't want to stop this. I think this whole process of trying to make more units is good. And I just don't want to, lose track of what I said there. And if we say we're going to look at this again next year and say, let's see what we can do to make it not only look at, affordable, let's look at the workforce and middle income people. And I said before, I would be supportive of what the board goes with.
So I think before we get down that road, and I don't think we're anywhere near ready for a vote yet, but
No, I'm not-
just to address that concern, we can certainly move this to town meeting and then separately recommend that the zoning bylaw working group continue to look at these issues and that the department and staff continue to look at these issues and address workforce type housing, mid-market housing. Those are things that are a concern of a number of the groups underneath us and the Master Plan Implementation Committee as well that are working on these things. And I think it's something that we can consider and can continue to consider as we move on, as with any zoning bylaw process. It's not like, and I'm speaking to everyone here, not just 3 of you on the board, it's always an ongoing process to change and consider things. And it was the goal of zoning recodification that we went through last year, was to get to a point where we can start to have substantive discussions about what needs to change to address each and every one of these issues. So, it's not a 1 year, one cycle process for sure.
Yes. Also, under this provision, it still has to go under a special permit
Yes.
for the ARB to review. And,
Right.
okay.
Yep.
So, to get to various things that have been said, the board can, because it does come back to the board, any project, any development comes to the board for a special permit. So, and nothing is being permitted right now. We have the opportunity to, 1, work with developers to either make things more affordable or address income tiers. And then 2, potentially provide options that get to the things that you're talking about, either through, flexibility with the space, in terms of the unit sizes and things like that. That's if we address some of these other issues, of course. And then also potentially pairing them with grants or other opportunities that could also help to potentially offset the cost of the type of development we're talking about.
Okay. So go ahead, Gene. We
Okay,
can
next,
move on.
I'm trying to figure out where this is in here. 8.2.4, so the same section where it says incentive yard and open space requirements, or front yard, side yard, rear yard. My only question about that is mixed use where the side yard is 0. One of the concerns that I've had that was incorporated into this is, but what happens if the structure next door is residential? And somewhere else, we fixed it. At least I think we fixed it. My suggestion is we fix it here that says, or 10 feet, I've forgotten the exact wording, if the primary use of the structure on the adjacent lot is residential.
It was the side setback, I think.
Side setback, right, so I think I'd like to suggest it could be 0 if it's not residential, but it should be 10 if that side is residential, so there's at least some buffer for.
So if it abuts an R1, R0, R1, R2?
Well, not necessarily, because you can have residential in all the Rs, and you can have residential in all the Bs. So you take a look and see what's next door.
I think I might, I like the idea, and I like the thrust of that argument, but I think I might tailor it to specific districts so that we're not completely limiting it or requiring it, but we can talk about that. I think if it's, absolutely if it's an R1, R2, R0 situation, but if you've got townhouses, yeah.
I'd like to add one thing to that.
Yeah.
Okay, I kind of agree with what you said. If it butts a residential district, okay, it should be a side yard setback, unless that building that's abutting that property is on 0.
Right.
Then it can be built to 0. Okay.
I think that might alleviate my concern.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's butting a residential lot or another lot, and that's already 0 already,
It can be 0.
it can be 0
But
down.
if it's abutting a lot that has where the primary use is residence, and
And it's
residence
set-
is not abutting, then it has to be 10.
Correct.
Okay.
To give a little extra.
I would feel very comfortable with that modification, what you said.
Yeah, I would.
So, yeah, that's it down over there with mixed use, the middle.
Yeah, so that's mixed use only in the B1 district. I think the specific item that you're talking about, because I remember you making this
Yeah, it's somewhere else.
comment, it's this bullet. So 1 after the table says, in addition to the density and dimensional allowances identified in C above, so those are those tables, the following supersede the requirements of section 5.3 where applicable. So I think that clarification might want to be here, or it's a footnote in the table.
I'm comfortable with however you get to where we were just discussing.
To make it parallel, it seems like you would want to make it 10 in the chart and then put a bullet similar to that.
He has
Down
alerts, so I'm not
below.
gonna,
No, 10
Yeah.
might be better, and then it could say, but 0
I think
if.
you say 10, but can be reduced if.
If, right.
Because I think that parallels the structure that you
Yep,
used in the
yep,
other
that
one.
makes sense,
Yeah,
David.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So if we're all in agreement on that, we can work on the language and come back to that if the general idea is acceptable.
I will say that, I mean, much of this I agree with. A few of the things I don't agree with, and some of them I'm not comfortable with, but I can live with if everybody else could live with. One of the things that I'm pretty sure I can't live with is district use.
which page are you on?
Yeah, which page am I on? Page 21 of the final review draft that had all the strikeouts on it. It's the one that says up to 25% of landscaped open space may include open areas accessible to and developed for the use of occupants of the building, located upon a roof. That's one thing I don't think I can agree to. I guess I don't agree to it for 2 reasons. One is, traditionally, we're thinking of open space being at or near ground level. Secondly, I think roofs need to be reserved for solar. And if we do this, then they're going to be stuck without being able to put solar on.
So it hasn't been discussed much in our groups, but there's some discussion in the future of potentially allowing for green roofs as opposed to solar roofs, but I don't want to go down that
But
road
even
now.
then, so I don't think I'm not so happy with the balcony, but I could live with the balcony unless somebody else doesn't like the balcony. But we can't really live with counting open space on the roof.
Can I counter that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely.
I would agree with you to a point, and I would leave it up to discretion once we review the project, that we can reduce that 25-foot reduction to maybe 20 feet or whatever. This way it allows, because the sites are so small and tight and shallow, that if we allow it to be less in the back, open space, then we can move the building back a little bit more and have a little more space out front, which would give you a little more life out in the streetscape. And I think that could be subjective to approval of the ARB based on the review at that point in time. That could be waived, but otherwise leave the 25, but it could be waived to a lower number, because if it's beneficial for everybody else to have it. I'll give you an example of the last project we looked at.
Right.
Okay?
Exactly.
They maintained that front of the building so close to the sidewalk is because they needed 25 feet in the back. Okay, if we waiver something, said that we could waiver something down to 20 feet, and adding that 5 feet in the front, makes a world of difference to that project.
I'm fine with that. I'm not fine with saying, let's count the roof as open space if there's access to it. What you're saying makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of you there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't love the idea of balconies. I can live with balconies, but I think taking it off the roof is.
I'm okay with taking
And I
off the
think-
roof. I just don't want to.
I think part of that is the aesthetic concern of having open space there,
Right,
where,
right.
balconies that are being counted as open space are theoretically, hopefully, going to be maintained and utilized as open space and not just left to fester. It also puts some of the green space and the open space down on the street. When we're talking about open space, we're not talking about yards and playgrounds here. We're just talking about grass and trees. So I think that's important to keep at street level to at least some degree.
Right, because in the example you gave, and you had mentioned that when we had the hearing, which made a lot of sense, we're not reducing the amount of open space, we're just reallocating where it goes,
Okay.
which is
Part of the things
Yeah,
they want to do,
which is
it's a
perfect.
roof and oil, but
Right.
which is fine.
But it shouldn't be on the roof.
I'm okay with not having a roof, but I just want to maintain at 25 in the back.
Right.
Subject to our review that we can waive that fact and say, hey, it's much more beneficial to the town if you add it to the front and gave it a little more space there, so it's not so crowded.
How can we do that?
Yeah.
Because that's not just this bylaw, that amendment here,
Yeah,
that's addressing setbacks
We're getting a
across the
little bit
entire bylaw.
further.
Entire zoning bylaw.
I'm thinking through all the different comments that have been made. I don't know if you're looking at it as well.
I mean, the ARB is allowed to waive a number of different elements of the zoning bylaw through the review. There is the section in 5318 which counts balconies and roofs as part of the usable open space and allows the Board of Appeals or the ARB to adjust that as necessary. But I don't know how you could alter a setback requirement even through the special permit process. There is a section that allows it, but you have to abut a street or public open space. I don't think that will be the case in the properties that would come to your review under this density bonus scheme. So I don't know the answer to that question, but it feels like it's something beyond the scope of what is being considered as part of these articles.
So that gets saved for next year too. along with the workforce and middle-income housing.
But certainly.
Doesn't fit into,
I'm not gonna,
No, and I like the idea.
I'm just
and I
bringing
think it
things
makes-
up. I'm
I
not
think it
here
makes-
to, you know.
I think it makes a lot of sense as we get to
Yeah.
negotiations of how to build, what to build, where to build on a lot with the developer. But I don't think it's within the scope of this particular article. So I think we can keep that in charge again, one of the subgroups here to look at that and come back to us with something in the zoning bylaw that would allow the ARB or the ZBA to make those changes as part of their environmental design review or their approval process.
Well, not only giving, saying that we can do that, but listing it somewhere. So with someone who's trying to follow the rules can say, oh, there's an exception here that we may be able to get.
Yeah.
It's not listed anywhere.
Yeah. No, but and it would have to be a separate.
Fine, I'm okay with that,
Zoning
but I'll
bylaw.
just add.
But I think it's a great idea, and I think it's something that we should consider for the next town meeting cycle.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm very much in favor of creating a mechanism for being more flexible in how the open space is allocated
Mhm.
around the building.
Yeah, thinking about, and I think you're talking about Sunnyside with the last project.
Yes.
Review.
Yes.
Absolutely, giving them 5 feet in the front and reducing the setback in the back, which abuts a parking lot.
Yep.
Sure. That would be the ideal use of that waiver, or that of the ability to allocate the open space.
Well, we
that way.
have the waiver now, but it's just the developer has no idea that we have that waiver. We have the ability to waiver that. And I just want to somehow put
It
it,
has
some,
to be, it's to be done in a certain way, but we can.
lawyer it up somehow.
Yeah.
I mean, sticking with the open space for a second, I am concerned both with allowing some of the open space to be on the roof as well as the balconies, because I think one of the concerns we've been hearing from the community is losing the neighborhood feel. And I think having open space that's, even if not accessible to the public, is visible to the public at ground level,
Right.
helps contribute
I think
to the feel.
And I think that's what I was getting at when I
Yeah.
mentioned the aesthetics of some of these projects. I think pulling it off of the roof alone
Yeah.
will give back to the street level.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody's going to come in and build a big roof, build a roof deck. It'll add to the value of every one of those properties that gets built
Sure.
there. Now you put it back down, you keep the roof for solar or mechanicals, or you can then choose to add a green roof, but it won't count toward your open space requirement.
But my other concern was the overall reduction in the amount of open space, where we're basically eliminating the usable open space, putting everything into landscaped open space and reducing the overall percentage of open space. And I have some concerns about that for the same reason of maintaining the feel at ground level.
So what do we want to do with that?
But we're only talking about these 2 corridors now. We're not talking throughout town.
I know.
Yeah.
And one of the things that surround these corridors right now are small parcels that discourages, because it's just not big enough. And I think by what this is trying to do is have another way of encouraging some of those smaller parcels along the corridor to be developed.
Yeah, no, I
And that's
understand.
why I see, I'm okay with that part. It's not everywhere in town, it's just,
I mean, I
that's why I saw it, okay? I'm not saying, you know.
Could be, I'm not as, I guess I'm much more concerned about the rooftops.
I think we're all in agreement with that.
Yeah, I think
So-
roofs are out.
Okay, roofs are out. I would rather that we had taken the approach that you brought up of creating more flexibility in the allocation of the open space and before we did this, but
So I think, I'm thinking back to some of the meetings and discussions that led to these bylaw amendments being crafted, and the idea is twofold. It's that usable open space is not actually usable open space. It exists because it's been required to exist since the bylaw change and whatever, but it's not functional space for the people that live in these buildings. And
Not as
converting-
people currently use.
Not as people
space.
currently use this space. And I'm thinking of the large apartment buildings and complexes that are up and down Mass Ave, where there is usable open space, but it's not functional in any way. And so changing that to landscape open space takes away from that requirement that it be functional, which is just negative space at a certain point. And it also considers the fact that lawns and plantings require a lot of water and are not necessarily the most environmentally sensitive way to handle these things. And encouraging more landscaped open space that requires less often, less care, less electricity, water, things like that is a better environmental move. It also goes toward encouraging the use of different kinds of landscaping and styles that address those issues.
And this is only a reduction up to 25% of landscape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't like the balconies either, but I could live with
Yeah.
it.
And as with any other project, as part of the special permit, a landscape plan is required. And the board can ask for different kinds of plantings to be put in place that are more responsive to certain environmental conditions that might exist on the site. It's not something that we've done as the board's presently constituted, but when Christine Sapinski was here, for example, it was a long discussion of every project of how those things were addressed. So it's something that we can consider as,
I mean, yeah. I think if the rest of the board's on board with this, I am okay with it. I think, yes, it reduces the total amount of open space, but it's basically eliminating the part that nobody was using. And actually increasing the landscaped
increasing the
aspect of
landscape
it,
access.
which adds aesthetically to the property.
And under most of these conditions, there's still setback requirements and other controls
But-
on the lot that keep it from just being a concrete box on the side of the road.
But I do think, again, not to belabor this, but it is important that we revisit how we allocate the open space
Yeah.
in the future.
I think that's,
Definitely push for that.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's something to put at the top of the priority list for next round, next cycle. So, okay.
Who's keeping the priority list?
Staff.
we wrote that.
Okay, cool. The next one is the next bullet down, and this is sort of a question I have. So,
Same 21?
yeah, the next bullet right
Okay,
after the
yep,
bullet
okay.
about the roof and the balcony for building the step back requirement. So right now, the step back requirement is on the third story, 3-story. This allows it on the 4th story for 4-story. What do we do with somebody who wants to build a 3-story building? Should we require the step back as they now have? Because the way I read this, there's no more step, if you take the density bonus, there's no more step back requirement until you get to the 4th floor.
That's right. Yeah, that actually is the way it is in the bylaw technically as it's written. So we did make, is this the one that has the amendment?
So this is,
We noticed there was a little bit of a problem with the way that it was worded.
Where it wasn't triggered unless it was
It was
5
5
stories.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not what we meant.
so,
Wording was in the law.
so we clarified the trigger, so it's 4 or more stories in height. The 7.5-foot setback is the same as it's always been. But this next phrase, beginning at the 4th-story level or the 30 feet above grade, are at the same level, or theoretically are the same level, unless you have an overheight first floor. But the way that it was written originally in prior drafts that were in front of the ARB, it was confusing. I think after some drawings, I think that this is more clear on where the step back is triggered. doesn't necessarily answer your question, Jean, on should it still be at the third story.
Well, right, and that's, I don't think it should be the third story if it's a 4 or 5 story building. I'm wondering if we should require the third story if it's a 3-story building. That's just my question.
You're creating a datum along the line there, and you're saying 3 stories is fine. Why should you penalize a 3-story building? Because you're saying everything needs a setback. If you're fundamentally fine with the 3-story being a setback, then a 3-story building should be fine.
Are they now required setbacks on 3-story buildings?
Yeah, so
that's-
section
that's-
3517 is the current requirement that's triggered with a 3-story building. That would remain as is in this density bonus scheme. And the height of the step back was increased a story to mimic the approximately, in many cases, the 1-story increase in maximum stories and the 10-foot increase in maximum height. So if a 3-story building is not taking advantage of the density bonus, it would still need to provide a step back at the 3rd story.
So, and that's exactly my question. So if somebody's taking advantage of the density bonuses,
Should it still be at the 3rd story?
but they're only building a 3-story high building, should they still have to have the step back on the 3rd story? That's my question. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just raising that as a question because right now, this is good for what it is, but it doesn't answer the question about what happens if it's a 3-story building. Well, it does. Right now, you don't need a step back.
You just don't need a step back
Right,
for
I'm
a 3-story
wondering-
building.
Yeah.
And I would say leave it,
I think we could leave it as.
I just leave it alone.
Thinking of the
Okay.
buildings along Mass Ave that have 3 stories, they don't feel,
we're not changing it, so we're just,
Okay.
Yeah, I think
we're
we
just
can
saying
leave it
that a
as-
4-story building, which we're increasing the height,
Right.
then the 4th floor has to be set back.
Yep.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so it's backed by certain feet, so it
7.5
doesn't actually
feet.
feel like that additional story. So I think
Okay.
I think it's fine to leave it the way it is.
Does that read that way?
That is exactly right. yes.
That's fine.
What Andrew-
Okay.
Andrew summarized.
The next bullet.
Still on that bullet, actually.
Okay.
The last sentence, the upper story step back shall be provided above all building elevations with street frontage excluding alleys. What I'm thinking about is a scenario where, say, the side or back of the building abuts a residential property, that particularly a shorter residential property. Would we want to, in that situation, continue to step back on that side of the building?
There is setback regulations right now. If a,
Not setbacks, the step back.
So you would want.
no,
to
I'm
do-
saying setbacks. Let me start with the setbacks first,
Okay.
okay? Because it makes a big difference.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, because everybody's assuming that you're just gonna build back of the building to the back of the property.
Right.
That's not
And
true.
that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen, okay? So there's already a setback from the rear lot to your property, and then I believe there's a setback requirement if your rear lot abuts a residential lot. Am I way off on a limb here, or you guys?
No, you're.
No, you're right. And
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a
and
height
So-
that's
so-
why I actually brought this too.
So there's already a setback there already,
The requirements.
okay?
Okay.
So if it abuts a residential lot,
Yeah.
am I correct on that?
Yes.
You're right.
Okay.
There's a
Yeah.
height requirement too.
Yes.
That's a residential
So-
lot where it
so-
cannot exceed a certain.
I don't think what you're saying here is the same as the thing back there, because there's already rules back there.
I mean, the height's the height, and it can only be what it's allowed to be. I'm more concerned, I was more thinking about, is there any issue that we should be concerned about here with the visual massing of the building from that perspective?
So you want to decrease what we have right now?
Well, I'm asking the question in that kind of a scenario, because we're doing the step backs where there's street frontage.
Because we're allowing a step up.
Yeah, right.
on what I'm
But,
saying.
but we're
Face the
doing
street.
it, we're doing it to basically reduce the visual massing from the pedestrian perspective. And now I'm wondering.
What I'm saying is the back's not raised. The height limit is the height limit in the back.
Well, it's not raised, but there might not be a step back at the back.
Yeah, but let's say, right now, a 3-story building is allowed. It goes back to a certain point, and it can't go any further unless it steps down, because that's a height limit back there. We're not altering that height limit. The height of your building could be so tall if it abuts a residential lot. Bump in if I'm wrong
No,
anywhere.
and I mean, we're on to things where the scenario that you're suggesting is something that upon the board's review, you could make a requirement that gets to the issue that you're trying to address in the scenario where it actually might occur. And I think that the board has that under your purview to address that in a case-by-case situation. This is providing an option, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's appropriate everywhere, because we're not looking at a specific development. But in the situation that you're describing, I think you're right that we should look at that, how it relates to, in any case, in any situation, we would be looking at the context.
And that comes in as part of our EDR, and our special permit process.
Exactly, is looking at abutting properties.
Is looking at abutting
And
properties.
actually, one of the criteria specifically relates to the kind of situation that you're talking about. It has to come into your EDR review.
And,
So,
and if I might, even before we consider the step backs, the reduced height buffer area
Right.
governs properties that are in proximity to low-density residential spaces or open space districts. So the way that that section reads, which is not changed as part of this suite of articles that are in front of you, the lower height is the requirement unless the ARB allows the higher height. So that although the suggested amendments are to reduce the distance within which the lower height is applicable from that residential area, even before you get to step backs, you could already lose you're already at a lower maximum height because of the proximity to those residential neighbors. And then from there, the ARB could raise that if so suited. But I think when you're thinking of a larger building next to a 2.5-story residential building, that lower limit is probably appropriate. And that goes to the criteria in the EDR special permit.
So applying the rules would get you to that point, and if at that point we still think there's an issue, then we handle it during the EDR process.
I think so.
Okay. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and that allows us to have a strict set of rules, but then apply that on a case-by-case basis. It's what we've always done is appropriate. So. Okay, moving on.
Moving on to the next bullet, off-street parking requirement. I guess an initial question I have, I think I might have asked you one of this before. Does apartment building include multi-use?
Yeah.
Yeah?
You mean in how it's described in the bylaw?
Yeah, how we
Yes,
interpret
it
it?
would be the
Okay,
apartment building.
okay.
And that would apply to condominiums as well. They're not typically apartments up around condos.
Well, it doesn't talk about tenure in the bylaw. I don't know, I mean, apartment building is
Yeah,
probably misleading in the bylaw.
That's where I'm headed
But
with that
that's,
question.
yeah,
But okay.
that's a separate issue.
We should think about
We should deal with
That's
that
something we should
separately.
dealing with
because I think an
next year.
apartment
Yeah.
building
the whole
is.
definition
That
Yeah.
doesn't
thing
make
needs
sense.
to be
I
fixed
think
a
it's
bit.
about a conversion, that's
Yeah.
why it's there.
Okay.
I can read off, I mean, the definition of apartment building is pretty clear, and it's a multifamily building designed or intended or used as the home or residence of 4 or more households, each in a separate dwelling unit, living independently of each other, and who may have a common right in halls and stairways.
It
So-
would have been nicer to
It's just
say,
to not-
and also includes mixed use.
Yeah.
Well, and also not necessarily apartment.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we should fix that next time, but we should.
That could be a
that's-
wordsmithing later, right?
It's a
Yeah.
different.
Next, but we should know that we're interpreting that to include mixed-use buildings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so as you all know, I have a lot of problems with the parking numbers. I didn't find the MAPC report particularly compelling on it. The one part that I found compelling was, and I think this is true, if you limit the number of parking spaces and then you tell the tenants you're only allowed to have one car, what you're ending up doing is reducing the number of people who are going to be able to live in that place, because a certain number of people have
Yeah.
and need more.
Families
than
may
one
only
car.
have one car, roommates may have more.
Roommates may have more, one person may work in Lowell, the other person may work on 95, transportation doesn't take them there, so by having it as one space, no matter what the size of the unit is, I think we're limiting the type of population that would be moving here to those people who can live with only one car or no car. So that's one thing. Second is, I think in all of the cities and towns in the MAPC report, we might be the only one that doesn't allow off-street parking at night.
On the street.
Melrose does not.
No.
Pardon?
Melrose does
All right,
not
but the
allow.
others allow off-street
I'm
parking.
not 100% sure.
Not, was Brookline one of the towns?
Brookline has no overnight
Waverly has
parking.
no
Chelsea
overnight.
has overnight,
Newton does not have overnight parking.
so some do and some don't. Yeah.
Well, there were only 5, so
Well,
if 2 of the
Chelsea.
2 of the 5 do, then that's only 2.
I stand corrected, thank you.
Yes. Just a clarification.
So I can't agree to one space no matter what the size of the units are. I just think that is too confining. I could agree to less than it is now. I could agree to one space per efficiency and one bedroom unit, 1.25 spaces per 2-bedroom units, and 1.5 spaces per 3-bedroom and larger units. So it's not a large increase, but it allows for some more flexibility for the tenants. And I should mention, I was talking to someone last year who lives in the box on 2, and I said, how is it? She talked about very expensive but nice, but the one thing that was terrible is there was no place for her guests to park when they came. And I think we effectively are creating the same problem with overnight guests. So I think we can have a little bit more than one. I think it's still not enough, but I would compromise with those numbers that I said.
Can you go over those again?
One space for efficiencies in 1-bedroom units, 1.25 spaces per 2-bedroom units, and 1.5 spaces per 3-bedroom and larger units. So I could live with that compromise.
What were
That's less than we do now.
That was my question. What are the current numbers?
Two.
Uh,
Two for a 3-bedroom, 2 for a 2-bedroom, and 1 for a 1-bedroom.
Right, so I've cut it down a lot, understanding the trade-offs and the need to have fewer parking
Sure.
spaces, but
And then it gives some
I can't get to the-
flexibility to
Right.
someone who's looking at this kind of project, and it will encourage a mix of units too. I could live with that, Gene.
Can we, I appreciate you making this compromise here, Gene, okay? Can we put stipulations that it could be further reduced if there was some sort of,
We have the right to further reduce it now.
Yeah, this is the ground floor.
Right, we have the
So
right now to
if anybody
reduce
can
it.
build more, not that they would, but they could, but we have the opportunity to reduce more depending on other trade-offs that are already in the bylaw.
So we already have that.
We can.
but is there something written there? So that, I'm just making it, I just want to make things clear, so
Yeah.
if someone's reading the zoning, they can say, oh, okay,
I don't remember what section of the ZBL it's in, but I'm sure Erin and Jenny
So
has it.
yes, we
ready
can
to go.
bring that up, but I would just draw to your attention that this is why I put this out, this is the scenario that we played out to get to this recommendation. And you can do some remath, we can do it together to see what ends up being the required parking under the scenario that Jean just put out. Because this takes into account both TDM and the affordable housing reduction, I believe. Applying both, but recognizing that actually there's only room for about 47 spaces on that site, even after it's
Well-
more than 20,000 square feet.
Well, that's because they didn't dig down and build a garage underneath.
Well, no.
And,
So-
For
and
the
that's,
amount of units, that would be
Right.
impossible.
and that's,
But,
that's
yeah,
using the one space per unit?
It's
start,
actually using,
or-
it's using the
1.35.
current bylaw.
The current.
Yeah, the current bylaw.
Okay.
So I'm cutting back on the current bylaw.
Yeah, but-
I don't
But
know.
even
I wouldn't
still-
use the digging down. A surface parking lot is 30,000.
Right, I know it's a
for-
lot more
And
expensive.
underground is anywhere from 80 to 100,000 per spot.
Right.
I've done 2 projects in Cambridge. I won't give you the addresses or anything else, okay? But it was one for one spot per unit. And I'm no longer part of the projects anymore, but for the first 4 years, the lot was never full. Okay?
I think we're different than Cambridge.
And I'm not sure because the lot, the parking spaces were also rented too. You know, and I agree, maybe we're attracting different type of people that's more transit oriented than,
Look, I say this as a family that's only had one car for the 30-plus years that I've lived in Massachusetts. So I could live in a place that only has one parking space unless I had somebody visit me and wanted to stay overnight, at which point I'd be, you know? So, I'm not like a family with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
so are you saying this is purely for guest parking, not for?
No. I think it's also to recognize that there are going to be some people who want to live in Arlington who need 2 cars.
50 spaces. 50. Oh, that would be required.
That would be required.
So it, just in this scenario for the 44 apartments
For 44 apartments.
instead of the 61?
Yep.
Oh, okay, so then it went down.
Say that again?
Yeah, I reduced.
So that's, but that's
Oh,
the
'cause
idea.
That's the, I'm sorry, this is
So
the,
I'm not saying I wouldn't agree to any reduction.
So, yeah,
I just
so
don't want to agree to the steep reduction down to 1.
yeah,
Right.
because you're playing it out.
Yeah,
So
the,
in this scenario,
it would still require the 40 spaces for the retail in this scenario, but the parking for 44 apartments would drop to 50 spaces. So the total would be 90 spaces, and then you have the transportation domain management and the affordable housing reductions. So it'd be a little bit more than 71 spaces as a result.
I will reluctantly agree.
Thank you.
I'm okay with it.
Okay with that?
Yeah, I'm sure it's an issue we'll continue to look at.
Right.
But that's a good starting point.
I mean, I think we heard a number of concerns about going all the way down to 1. I think there is a larger parking discussion that the town needs to have that is not appropriate as part of
It's not
this
part, it's not
article's
our
discussion.
purview at all, but it needs to happen.
I think this is at least partially responsive to the concerns that we heard raised.
Yeah, I think it's a good compromise from what's proposed and what exists, and
Fair enough.
keeping
The
that.
the only other things I had on 16 were some wording changes that I can send over to the staff.
Yeah, so we can always submit wording changes after the fact,
Can we
confident.
just go back to the earliest comment that Jean had about adding the additional districts? After giving that a little bit more thought, we added all the tables and the amendments to the tables. I don't know how we would do that right now. Do you understand? So all the amendments, I'm sorry, after Aaron's done. Also, please make sure that this captures what you were talking about with the parking requirements. what Erin's typing right now.
So, is one space per, so I'm using the word efficiency because it mimics what's in the off-street parking table. So one space per efficiency dwelling unit and one bedroom dwelling unit. Maybe that should be an or. 1.25 spaces per two-bedroom dwelling unit and 1.5 spaces per three-bedroom dwelling unit.
3-bedroom and larger.
And larger.
Right. Yes, that does, thank you.
I think this is 3 bedrooms. There's no larger.
There could be.
4 bedrooms, doesn't it constitute a lodging house now?
Actually, in the bylaw, it just says 3 or more bedroom dwelling unit. So that's the wording that we would use.
But I thought somewhere...
It's already in the bylaw that way.
I think,
under Harvard Hill.
but yeah, I thought
Bedroom.
zoning said...
3 or more bedrooms.
But we were already amending 3 or more bedrooms, so that would be the phrasing that we would want.
Okay.
We can,
We can also.
Did you want to do
Yeah.
efficiency or 1 bedroom?
Yeah.
yes, you said, Erin did catch that already. She just hasn't made the change.
Okay.
But,
Okay. So go ahead, Jenny.
Just back to the original comment of adding the multi-use rather,
In the highlighted.
all of those highlighted extra districts. We don't have any, how would we address all of these tables? You know, if you add them, you're just simply adding them to increase affordability, but we actually don't have any of we didn't deal with any of the setback issues or the other requirements for those districts. So that's my
The problem,
comfort is lower now, adding those districts.
the problem is then we're not offering the density bonuses to someone who wants to build a multifamily or mixed use in whatever wasn't listed before.
Okay, well, multifamily would not be allowed in the I district anyway,
Right.
because there's no residential in the industrial district.
Right.
So we cannot do that.
But mixed use
Mixed use
is allowed, which is why
Yeah.
my suggestion was as applicable or allowable. Or what-
It's just how we
Whatever
would
the
handle
words
it in the
Yeah.
district, in the tables. It's,
Well, I mean, I think if we want to limit it to what it is now, we have to understand that, and next year we need to fix it. Because if somebody comes in and wants to do a mixed use in a PUD,
Where do we have a...
A
where
PUD.
do we have a PUD? We had that question come into the house the other day.
I don't think we have one,
We
do we?
never had one.
but,
No.
but it's there to be created.
Right. It's-
Right.
Okay, sorry.
In theory, but
In
not
theory.
in practice.
In
Not
theory.
in
In
practice.
theory.
May I just say, so this was not meant for tonight, but at our next meeting, whenever that will be, when we have the space for it, to talk about next year's, what we want to do next year with the funding that we're asking to get appropriated for future zoning amendments. I was hoping that we could deal with issues in the industrial zones, which are in the master plan. So that could be something that we could get back to. I think adding it here complicates how we have to address the rest of the amendments that we're talking about right now.
I think
Not as comfortable.
it,
with that
it makes
from
sense
a
logically.
Is that from the-
scope
Yeah.
point of view.
I think to add them, but I just think perhaps in terms of clarity and perhaps politically, expanding the scope of what we're talking about, even if it makes logical sense right now.
All right, let me suggest a different, less intensive alternative. I think also that you can have multifamily in the B districts.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
And that, so we need to add that at least.
Yeah.
Oh, that edit that definitely would have happened for sure. 'Cause
Okay,
it
so
wasn't
that,
clear.
right, because I had mentioned that to you the other
You
day.
wrote that in your comments.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
so,
the adding of those other districts that I don't,
okay, I'll withdraw that.
I'm just,
I'll withdraw that as long as we
Have the B district.
clearly add multifamily in the B district can take advantage of the density bonuses also.
That might not be the most eloquent way to phrase it, but
We can work on wording as long as the idea is agreed to.
Okay,
Fine with that.
thank you.
Good. Okay.
okay. That's all I had for 16.
Okay. David? Ken?
I think Jean Let me just double check, but I think Gene pretty much hit the things I was concerned about.
I spoke all my concerns when Gene brought up his.
That's why I went to Gene first, is I figured he would encompass all of our.
So I'm perfectly fine where we ended up with right now.
No, I think
Okay.
that was it.
So that's ready for a vote.
Can I ask a quick question? I did not necessarily follow the commentary around this with the side yard requirements at the, I just didn't follow that conversation.
Take that out.
Okay,
No, go back to the table.
yep,
Where it says 0 right now.
right here,
Yeah, put 10 there,
okay.
and then put an asterisk there, or a bullet, or will that bullet take care of it?
Whatever.
Yeah,
Okay, and then go back down to,
Well, you have to say what goes in the asterisk.
yeah,
Well-
we're gonna go down to the asterisk now.
Okay.
I think it becomes a footnote to this table.
Okay, the footnote, then you don't need the asterisk then.
Okay,
So it just says
But
10.
it's very similar to that other bullet point about the setbacks. That's down below, I think.
Well, what we basically want to say can be as little as 0 if the adjacent property is not used for residential purposes, or the building on the adjacent property is at the property line
Correct.
is not used for residential?
purposes, or the building on the adjacent property is at the property.
It could be a big apartment building that's just butted right against the property line
We're
already.
gonna have somebody tear it down.
Okay, thank you. And
So-
then that other bullet remains in there, though,
What other bullet?
the.
Yes.
down.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, I'm
So
sorry. to
can
do
can we
that.
vote this then as we go through these two others, Andrew, with the understanding that the staff will send us something so we can do a final?
Yes. Yeah. What we'll do is we'll vote to move forward on that. It will be sort of wordsmithed before it's sent out to town. The process we've done in the past is that we'll vote on it as amended. We give the staff a chance to make edits and wordsmithing, have an opportunity of wordsmithing. They don't do any substantive changes. Once it's moved, and the point to do any substantive changes by an amendment at town meeting, either by us or by someone, a town meeting member. But once we decide, for the most part, it's decided. The idea is decided.
So, may I, just for clarification? I know you're talking about Article 16, but you're also really talking about Articles 6 through 13 at the same time right now because of the nature of how we're amending them.
That's right.
So is there anything further about this?
Well, do we want to,
Yes,
I'd suggest maybe we want to talk about those and make sure before we vote on anything.
That's-
We could talk, sure, we could talk and then we can vote.
I'd rather just vote on 16 right now, and then go and do the other ones. And
My
then,
idea was to vote on them.
all at once?
Vote on 16 now.
Yes.
It's still discuss the other items.
Correct.
Not table them and
Yes.
just move no action.
Nope.
Because I think there is some discussion to be had there, either for 2019 town meeting or to add to our priority list as we move forward, because I think the discussion that's been had through this process has been valuable and worth considering, so.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
But I think we're at consensus on 16, so I'd be comfortable taking a vote on it now.
So what's the motion we have to make?
So we would move to recommend Article 16 as amended.
Just a question before we do that. So, 6, 7, 8, 10, and 13, if I got that right, are the articles that are largely now going to be encompassed within the density bonus
Yes.
scheme, although we still need those articles
We
to
need to-
make some minor
Right.
changes to refer
Some.
people to the
Yes,
density bonus
so-
scheme. I saw that.
I know I had notes about this and getting them.
And then 9, 11, 12, and 14 are standalone, still outside of the density provision.
Yes.
If we disagree or vote no action on any of those standalone pieces, would that affect what we choose to do with respect to 16?
No.
Because that could,
It might, in particular, you might want to consider leaving the height buffer as is, but incorporate the reduction into Article 16, just as a suggestion.
well, that's a good one to bring up, because that's one that I have questions about.
But I think 12, but I think the rest of them stand on.
So I
their
think
own.
what I took down from Monday night was that 6, 7, 8 are encompassed in 16. 9, 11, 12, 14 all get discussed and may or may not move forward. 10 is an editorial change. That becomes part of 16. 13
13 is in 16.
is in 16 and
Yes.
out.
Yeah, so it's really 9, 11, and 12. Right?
Yes, 9 is
9.
townhouses.
Yep.
Which is primarily adding the word structure, but there's a provision that you might want to include. 11 is the height buffer,
So we do need to discuss 11.
and then 12 is the corner lot, which
Mhm.
could stand on its own, but might be something that gets encompassed. And then 13 is the parking, which we just discussed, and 14 stands on its own. It's more
And
administrative.
since-
14 is an administrative
Yeah.
change that needs to
Since
happen.
we're seem to be in consensus for 16, can we just move to approve 16 unless the other articles that we approve or don't approve affects 16 and we come back to it? Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying.
Why don't we do this?
Why don't we just go through?
Why don't we table 16 for now?
Okay.
We can vote at the end of the night. We also have the option to vote on Monday if we want to take additional time to go through things. We have a meeting scheduled, we have an agenda that is going to be posted on Thursday. It's not a public hearing, it would just be a continuation of this meeting as intended. Everyone will be there, so we could vote on everything at that point.
Okay.
So I've already kept that in mind, depending on how late things get tonight. It's already 10 of 9. We've discussed one article, so, which is expected.
Well, it was a big one.
It was, that's why we did it first.
Steve?
It was important. No, and I don't mean to sound flippant. It was an important article to discuss, and I think Steve did a good job, and staff did a good job. And Jean, thank you for your hard work going through everything. And I know from conversations with you previously that was why I chose to go to you first on comments, encompass all the things that have been discussed. So, all right, so we'll table 16, but I think we have consensus for the most part where that goes. So let's begin at the beginning and go to Article 6. I'm fine with going no action on Article 6. I think the gist of that is encompassed in Article 16, and it becomes, 6, 7, and 8 all become density bonuses as part of 16.
Except they have a note that they're adding.
Yeah.
So I would suggest this first section might be a moot point. However, in the tables in section 5.4, need to have this note to see the section for the lot regulations for structures with 4 or 5 dwelling units,
Okay.
which is part of the density bonus idea, is that structures, multifamily structures or mixed-use structures with 4 or 5 units receive those requirements by right.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I have a suggestion for wording change, and I know we use the same wording
Yeah.
in lots and lots of the tables. The thing that sort of concerned me about the wording is that, and I know why you did it, but 8.2.4C is for more than 4 or 5 dwelling units.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit confusing. I wonder if all the note needs to really say is also see section 8.2.4C.
Oh, you mean just, yeah.
Without the
I mean,
rest of
that's true, yeah, because we actually do that in other tables.
Yeah, so I think that's really all it needs to
Exactly.
say.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we add this to 16?
That was going to be my next question.
I would say also see, just not only C, but also a C section.
Well, that's the existing bylaw that's just going to remain as is.
Yeah, so we
That
were,
section.
I think this came from the other night, is what you're looking at,
So
right?
I would just suggest that change for every time you use it.
I can appreciate that.
But can we just add this to 16?
That points people to 16.
It's telling people to
essentially.
go to that section
Okay.
for more
But it still needs to
information.
be there the way it is
Yeah, we have to
for
have that.
people
So
who
we-
don't
Yeah.
get the density
So we need to
bonus.
tailor Articles 6 just to that recommendation, just to that one change.
It's just a footnote.
I'm
That's
fine
all
with
we're
that.
doing now, because everything else has moved to
16.
actually 8 feet.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Right, let me see if there's anything else.
Oh, what about this one? I think you can still say this. Oh, right, yeah, it's just also adding the, even though we were referencing.
Okay, so Article 6
the table
becomes
title.
administrative then, not until no action vote, it's just an administrative change.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the only comment I had on.
So there's no vote on 6?
And
We
then
would vote, but instead of voting to amend it as, or voting on the amendment that was initially out there, the bulk of Article 6 is now moved to Article 16. Here, we're just making this administrative change, so we still need to move it to town meeting
As amended.
as amended.
As amended.
And then whether or not this edit in the district and purposes is still something you want to pursue.
I thought it made sense. Why are you questioning it?
Because we increased those to be consistent with the increases in the density and dimensional tables in
Right.
section 5.4, so that there was some cross consistency.
But it's still true because.
true, yeah.
It's still true because people can get the density bonuses.
Yep.
So I at least thought it was fine.
Is it true if they don't get the density
No.
bonuses?
No, but the
But we
districts,
still want to say that it's
the
allowed.
districts
It's
That it's
themselves
allowed,
allow.
right. Okay,
Right.
that makes sense.
So, there's
And it's
no-
all up to, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just,
Right.
okay.
That's it.
So what do you want to do here?
So we would move to advance it to town meeting as amended.
So motioned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye?
But that was 6, right?
That was 6.
That was 6.
Yeah, as amended, so that's taking the bulk of it, of the density and dimensional requirements out. This is our amendment, putting them in Article 16, just requiring administrative changes. So moving to Article 7, which is density and dimensional requirements for mixed uses. Again, the bulk of this amendment is moved to, bulk of this bylaw amendment is amended.
I had the
Moves
same
to Article
comment on the notes through.
16.
Through 7 also.
And so here we just have to point people to Article 16, or the changes that are made in Article 16. Yeah.
Sorry, just trying to
Yeah.
stick with this.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Point people to the recommendations of Article 16. So again, it becomes an administrative change instead of a substantive change, pointing people to the proposed
Correct.
bonus changes.
So we're good?
I think so.
So motioned?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye?
So 8.
So we are at 8, which is the open space requirements for multifamily uses and mixed uses.
And I had the same comment about changing the reference.
And so the requirements become a density bonus, or the reduced requirements become a density bonus.
So what did we, I just want to be sure, what did we agree on? We agreed no
We
rooftops.
agreed no rooftops.
It's
But-
actually, it's
yeah.
typed. It's-
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go
I
back
just
to
want to
that.
make sure I understand what we ended up with.
And we stayed with landscaped open space rather than usable open space.
And balconies were okay.
And balconies were
Balconies
okay.
are
So this bullet
okay, and we
point-
changed the parking a little bit.
And the idea is that the next
Okay.
step.
And the parking we took
Yeah,
care of.
and then the next
Yeah.
step will be to look at the allocation of open space on a given lot.
So this one is
We'll do
up
that
to
next year.
25% of the landscaped open space may include balconies at least 5 feet by 8 feet in size, only accessible through a dwelling unit and developed for the use of the occupant of such dwelling unit. That is the amendment. That's it.
Yep,
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
that's all of 8, just that one part, that
That's
one?
it.
Okay,
Wow.
we're,
well, that's how 8 gets encompassed.
That's how 8 goes to
That's-
16. But this becomes,
But it has to be
again,
noted as such.
just noted in footnotes. So again,
Correct.
Article 8, as amended, becomes a change to footnotes and is really administrative change. So we would need to move that to town meeting as amended.
So motion? No, it's okay.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. Sorry, Gene.
Good.
You.
Okay, so Article 9, we do need to discuss. Article 9 is regarding townhouses and definition of structures. So if staff has any input on this, otherwise I'm going to go to the board. This was not one that was discussed in public meetings.
I would just
Public
point
hearings.
out that really the substantive change of this article is this first section where the townhouse structure is changed. The definition of townhouse remains the same at
Mhm.
3 units attached in a row, essentially. The rest of the article, with the exception of the edit to 5314, is adding the word structure into the tables, so that the user of the zoning bylaw understands that it's not the individual townhouse unit, it's the entire attached structure. So this, unless there is an edit to 5314, this becomes really administrative.
No, wait,
It's
this-
not administrative,
5314A.
it's not
No.
administrative because of A.
It's not
Yeah.
administrative because of A.
Yeah, it is a substantive
Yeah, so
change.
A
But
is really the key to this one.
Yeah, but you're
I-
changing it from 150 feet to 200 feet
That is the, that's
and
the
from
big.
6 to 8, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the
And
big.
I do have a question on that.
Go ahead.
Where would this happen?
Yeah. I mean, and I do think actually we heard quite a bit about this at the hearings from people who live in the R4 district, so I'm not sure it was,
Because I looked on the map and I could not find a spot where this would be applicable,
well,
unless I'm mistaken somewhere.
I think
Why-
it's more that if you were ever to redevelop any particular location and wanted to develop townhomes in the R4 district, that it would provide the opportunity to do more than what you could potentially do now. And that's actually, potentially do now is really less than whatever is existing on the site right now because they're non-conforming. So it was supposed to be an allowance, it is supposed to be an allowance to do a little bit more. And to, yes, it would have smaller unit sizes ultimately as well.
Even the smaller units, I don't see where you can put it anywhere in any of the zones that we're talking about.
Why?
Well, this
Because
is-
why?
I don't think the lot sizes exist.
It's the,
There's nothing,
it's
I don't.
It would require an aggregation of lots.
Right,
literally,
exactly.
To do that, to do something like this. And that would be potentially prohibitively expensive. It would give you more land than you necessarily need. So in general, I like the idea of townhouses and encouraging development. I think the ones that have been built in the last 20 years or so have been well done and a good addition to the neighborhoods. I'm thinking of Mass Ave and Mill Street here, and then the ones that were built at Sims, I think they're really nice looking. But I don't know that they're really, is it practical or isn't to allow?
I mean, I'm
I'm
not
okay
against,
with moving it forward.
I just don't
and
know
letting
what,
town meeting
what
decide.
we're gonna do with this.
I'm okay with moving it forward just in case somebody does aggregate a few
Yeah.
lots together. and
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, it gives another option in certain lots if someone wants to redevelop an entire lot.
Fair enough.
So I just one point. So I have not heard of any opportunity. I don't know of anything in R4. So just to be very clear about that. But I will say that we've had a couple of cases in the business districts where there's an opportunity to do something, and if they wanted to develop a number of townhomes, they could only develop 6, which was not feasible economically. So that's one situation that I'm aware of. But that's it. I don't have any other
Okay.
evidence
Okay,
of interest.
I'm good with 9.
Yeah, I'm okay with 9. I think, I'm glad we discussed that. I'm okay with moving on. Give David a chance.
You get to
Does
motion.
that mean do you want to take that as a vote?
So
So
is
we're gonna put it
is
in
there
nine. So-
anything to amend in 9, or we're?
Yes,
as-
it's just that one, the A.
Okay,
We're not
And
amending,
then-
we're not amending that, though.
as proposed, not as
No,
amended.
just as proposed.
Just as proposed. So
As
we would move.
Move to
Be a vote to move
advance
to advance.
Article 9 as proposed to town meeting.
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
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 Okay. Article 10, which is upper story building step backs.
No action necessary.
Right. So here we would just, we've already discussed this, we've moved it, if I'm wrong, we've moved it entirely to 16. So you could recommend a vote of no action to town meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright, same thing with 11. Oh, sorry, no, 11 needs discussion,
11
sorry.
is-
11 is the reduced height buffer area, yeah. So this one we do want to talk about because this is not a 16 issue here. Jumped ahead to 13 in my notes. So, here is something that I think we've heard a lot of concern about, sort of underlying a lot of the density arguments here, where it's reducing height distance between a new project and then the larger single-family, two-family lots and open space, town open space, parks, playgrounds, et cetera, in town. Jenny, can you walk us a little bit through the rationale behind this?
Okay, I think actually this, I'm gonna go back to this, because I think that this really gives you the illustration of where this comes into play, into any development, is you get this. Once
Which
you-
page are you
this
looking
has four.
I couldn't figure out what that sort of,
It's
this was.
When you apply the height
That's-
buffer lines,
all of those lines and the arrows.
it
are
precludes
referring
all of
to
that story
directions.
except that little sliver.
Exactly. So that's all that remains of that roof, is that, of that, let's just call it a, not quite a story, it looks like a
Elevator shaft.
Can you help?
shaft.
It would be in addition to
Yeah,
somebody's.
look at it, look at
It's
this,
a
looking
spire.
at it from above, the little sliver is here when you've applied the height buffer circles.
And part of it is because the height buffer is so wide and so deep. And so this is actually, since we had a conversation about buffer zones so recently in relationship to recreational marijuana, I feel like this is actually that's a good point of reference for us, because we were looking at, I think it was 200 and more feet. And once you start, if we're talking about our commercial corridors primarily, you're looking at a very big circle. 150, 200, 100. So we were trying to make that a little bit smaller, so that there's still a buffer between a proposed building and its neighboring buildings, many of the neighboring buildings still, but not so many of the neighboring buildings that you end up losing an entire story as part of that process. I think that's the easiest way to describe it.
Mhm.
Can I also
Yeah.
note I had a conversation with a homeowner that lives in an R2 district immediately behind a B3 district in East Arlington, which is the general condition of Mass Ave going through East Arlington, is that the higher density residential districts and the business districts are only one lot deep on Mass Ave. So she's immediately behind. The lot on Mass Ave is typical of those lots on Mass Ave at just over 5,000, maybe it was 6,000 square feet. She had a typical R2 lot. I don't exactly know the distance, but because these lots are so small, even based on her orientation and the reduction to 35 feet, her R2 property requires the lower height on that B3 property, per the way that the zoning bylaw, this element is applied. And the editing that we propose in the text in paragraph A is to clear up how the ARB can make a decision to allow the higher height limit. So I would argue that because of this, and it is just the East Arlington condition that I'm explaining, but the typical lot size and the typical proximity of these low density residential districts, even at this reduced distance, will still trigger the reduced height buffer area.
Can I make a suggestion?
Go ahead, Chris, I had a question. You go first.
Right now, the distance is taken from the edge of the property.
Yeah.
I'd be more supportive if it was taken from the building as opposed to the property line.
The measurement.
Yes, and then where it comes from 200 feet to 50 feet, I'm kind of leaning toward maybe a compromise between that two distances. I really think we can't just, in the interest of encouraging development, hurt someone else that's already there already. But I think there's somewhere a fair compromise between the two. And I think if we just say it's not taken from the property line, but taken from the closest point of the building, like the corner of the building that's closest to the other building, and then somehow,
And then what would you do with the numbers? Because I don't like these numbers either.
I don't,
So
but
what would you do with the numbers?
I was gonna listen to you guys and say, what do you think's a fair compromise?
I was going to ask you that.
Well, yeah, I don't like these numbers, and I found that the shadow study that we got from MAPC unhelpful and unconvincing. And I don't know what the number should be because I haven't seen a shadow study to tell me how it would affect neighboring properties with any other numbers. Or in a real context, actually, with Arlington examples.
Just to go back to the measuring, where would you put that into this? Because it doesn't actually talk about that.
Right now, the measurement is taken from the closest point of the property line.
What does it say?
Well, it must say somewhere, because someone did it to the closest point of the property line here.
It
So-
might just be silent on that.
It's actually not.
Then I would add it
We
there.
have to specify where it is.
And then figure a compromise of what a fair distance is, because I think these numbers are a little too aggressive.
I'm not sure how to compromise now, because I don't know what the effect of any number is going to be.
I would agree with you there. I just don't know what to say right now, because short of looking at some things.
I
'cause-
mean, I understand the importance of looking at this as part of the overall, density program that we're looking at. But I'm very uncomfortable with this because I don't fully understand how it's going to affect neighboring properties, and I don't feel like we can just arbitrarily change the numbers around without understanding the analysis.
Yeah, this is one that I've struggled with more than any other. Because of that, I don't know what the right answer is. But I think it's important to look at it and reduce the height buffer area to get a more lively mass ag and add some vibrancy to our commercial districts, which is one of my main reasons for being on this board and looking at these things. But I don't know how differently it's going to impact someone, more than any other article here, how it impacts someone in East Arlington, how it impacts the bike path, how it impacts parks and open space, and how it impacts people in the Heights. And there's such a disparity in building styles and feel that it's important to have something, any zoning bylaw is, that works for the entire town, and then it's up to this board to apply that under what we can do with our own process of give and take. And I think for the most part, we've been able to come to some sort of agreement, consensus on other things, particularly with how we've discussed 16. I don't know where to go with this right now.
It's hard to say this, but I think maybe the only way to go is to say we don't have enough information to move this forward at this point and add this to the let's get it done next year.
Well, I'd like to add one thing. just make a clarification that this, whatever distance we decide on, will be taken from the nearest point of the building, not the property.
Right.
And that's something that has to be codified, because that's an instruction not just to the developer, but to the enforcement
Yes.
of it as well.
And then we'll just leave the numbers the way it is for now, till we get a better understanding of this, and I'm okay with that.
The scope is narrow on
The-
this one.
This
Yeah,
scope is
that's my
narrow.
concern too, is I don't know what we can change here,
Well,
and still be.
one thing one other way to look at this would be, instead of dealing with the table, would be just to insert that one
Yeah.
phrase, which allows the board to even have this ability to determine based upon the location, site-specific information, et cetera. And if it's satisfactory to you, then you can think about some reductions.
So we wouldn't change the table.
Well, we would need to talk about that, because what would be how would you lower it would still
Well,
be the issue.
so I had a
By what?
I had a suggestion, and this is maybe not a very good suggestion. I was a little bit concerned having us just rely on the criterion 333 and 334, because I don't think that really gets at this particular issue. So I was trying to think, how could you get at this particular issue? And the only way I could think of doing this, might not be good, is that there could not be an increase of more than 1 hour per day, any time of year, of shadows on the adjacent property. So we would add that to, it's just like a temporary fix until we figure out what to do. That you can't add more than 1 hour a day of shadows at any time of year on the adjacent property, and that be added after the 333, 334. So that would give us some actual numbers to go by, and maybe by next year we can fix this better.
I just find that overly restrictive to applicants. I think that might be a hard threshold for any applicant to overcome.
But I would have a lot of trouble saying to the neighbors, oh, I'm sorry, your house is, or your backyard, or your solar panels, or whatever, or where you dry your wash, is gonna be in shadows 2 or 3 hours a day more than.
We don't have to
now.
say that. We can recommend no action and send it back for further review.
Well, we could
study.
do that too. Yeah.
And
I was just
it's our
trying-
article, so if we want to bring it back in a year, we can bring it back in a year. If we've looked at something.
I was just trying to find a compromise so we could move it part way, but I'm
Yeah,
happy to do
no,
no action.
I agree. I just,
But would that stifle all the other bonus gains that we're trying to do? Then all the other articles just are mute.
I guess it depends where the.
When I look at this thing here, it looks like it's mute. I mean,
yeah.
I'm just worried about that, that's all. I mean, we have all the right intentions, just the consequence of what happens now. And I think the intentions are correct. I'm not sure what we do here. This is,
Well, except this table is just for land in R0, R1, R2, and OS.
Could it possibly be that based upon a finding of the board and all of this, sorry, I'm not going to repeat everything it says up there, that you could grant that up to 50 feet? So you could, if you make a determination that it is okay to further reduce the buffer area, you could do that by up to 50 feet if there's a finding based upon the location, site-specific factors, or if it's demonstrated by the applicant, et cetera, to the satisfaction of the board. You would have that discretion. Right now, you don't have that discretion. It's a fixed requirement, and yes, it would cut into the other bonuses that you've just gone through, particularly height, obviously. Not,
So-
But it would require an
not all the
applicant to come
others.
before us and make the case.
Well, when
that
they come to you, they would be making that case.
They
yeah.
would, but it would require them at that point to additionally make that case beyond what would already be required to make.
That's right.
which is a shadow study.
Which would require a shadow study as
Mhm.
part of anything that came out of that. And to show to us that there is negligible impact on, or the impact on neighbors is negligible.
So maybe that needs to be in there, that the impact on
Would
adjacent
that be
properties is not-
overly burdened on?
I think it's demonstrating to the satisfaction of the board is that. that's what you do when you do EDR special permits anyway. You're making that point by going through all of your criteria. You have to meet that standard anyway with any development. So I don't know why that would be here too.
Because it will.
No, I mean, I'm just saying that it might be similar. But if you want to say it.
So is the proposal that we change it so that we are giving ourselves the discretion
Yes,
to reduce it?
Correct.
Rather than as a right?
yes, it would
And that reduction could be down to 50 feet?
As little as 50 feet.
be, well, I was saying
Pardon me?
up to 50 feet.
Yeah, that's what was
Less than what is
confusing me.
required-
So we could
less than
reduce
what
it.
is
So right now it
Reduce
requires,
it
right
from
now
200.
it's 200. We could
Reduce it to
reduce it
150 or 50?
down
Yeah, down.
as low as
You
50.
would be going down. Right?
No, we could do, it would go, so we would have it as 200, but we would then have the discretion to reduce that to 150 feet.
Oh,
Or less.
Or
because
less.
It's up to.
Or more.
okay, well, I'm just trying to understand
Yeah.
what
That was what
Jenny's
I was
proposing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Well,
was trying to
wouldn't-
not be fixated on 25 and 35.
Why wouldn't, well, one other option is we can reduce it up to 50% of each of those numbers.
So that's
Yeah,
even
I mean, if
greater.
Pardon me?
That's going back to the
if
greater
it's-
version, right? Up
If
to
it's
50%.
entirely discretionary, that makes me more comfortable in just picking a number, at least for the time being. Because we can always adjust it, and we don't have to grant anything that doesn't make sense.
No,
on
that
a
gives
given
us,
project.
it's already part of our review process, but it gives us more authority to require any project to meet these standards and to present certain things to the board and be considered as part of the public process.
Well, I
But
like
this is a
adding your
benefit.
language to it, which is that any reduction would have only negligible impact.
Would, yeah,
on the
would have to
industry.
show that any impact on abutters would be negligible.
Negligible. So I would add that in there. and
If you add that paragraph in there, okay, then it makes sense. Because then, if someone came in to develop a project, and it said that we had discretion to do what we wanted to do up until, but what's the parameter we're working from?
Well, that's
But
in-
that's-
that
that
why I
makes
like
sense
this
now.
language.
Yeah, and now it gives abutters an extra layer of protection that their property is not gonna be negatively impacted by any of this. And because zoning bylaw covers everything, and then we have to have site-specific criteria and decisions on every project that comes in, I think that gives us some leeway where in one part of town, a project might work and make sense, whereas in another, it just simply wouldn't, and it would have to fit in the lot that's in there. And part of that's because lots in Arlington are no two are alike.
Do we need to be specific about any impact of shadows on abutters would have to be shown as negligible?
Yeah, shadows is smart.
It's a shadow or environmental, or shadow or other environmental impact.
Well, what are we talking about here other than shadows?
You're really just talking about.
I'm just talking about shadows. Yeah, I mean,
I mean, I
Yeah,
don't think,
yeah.
I think environmental might be too.
I think
broad.
environmental's too broad, yeah, too open for interpretation, but any shadow impact on abutters.
That's much more specific.
Well, no, the ARB would have to find that any shadow impact on abutters would be
Well,
negligible.
maybe we tie that then to the.
As opposed to,
earlier
we
phrase,
have to show,
just
we have
since-
to.
What about the opposite then?
Because the redevelopment person.
Glare.
That's an interesting
It's a good point.
I mean, if you built a glass
That's a
building
problem with these glass
right
buildings.
next to someone and, maybe it's curved a little bit and that curve
Yeah, and we
faces
can-
someone's bedroom
We
window
can
and that
consider,
just...
we can consider glare's impact as a matter of course on the streetscape, but now it's bringing it into considering that as
So can we just say shadow and
homes
glare?
abutters. So I think that's a
Shadow or
good
glare
suggestion.
impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although based on some things I've seen, glare can have an impact far beyond any height buffer.
Well, that's what we're
Will
doing.
not
I
cause.
know, but
No, I hear you.
But we can consider that as part of the EDR process. Here, it's specifically considering it as part of the height consideration.
I've seen projects melt vinyl siding from next door neighbor.
Oh, yeah, I understand, yeah.
So it has to say any shadow or glare impact.
Yeah. So we would have to have a shadow study and sun study for any project that came before us that wanted to be able to do this.
No, that comes after based on the criteria established, I think. And it would be,
Yeah.
and the ARB would find that any glare, shadow or glare impact
Would be the ARB and or ZBA.
and or ZBA would be negligible
don't forget the
on the
ZBA,
abutters.
right.
Thank you. Right.
We'll wordsmith more on
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
No, I think that captures.
But are we
yeah.
still changing it to default to the existing with the opportunity to reduce it? If
If they show that there's no,
Yeah, what can we reduce it to?
Well,
So I
you
think-
know,
I think
one was
yes.
a- One was a percentage and the other one was up to.
Yeah, we got away from that a little bit with the idea
So we have better
of
wording.
of the ARB control, so we have better wording there. But I think we keep it at the default height buffer limit, but give an opportunity, but require a certain showing that they've met standards, criteria that the board and any other party who has to have approval of the process here can meet, and it's clear and it's not overly burdensome to any party, then we can reduce it by some amount. So it's not automatic. It has to be proven, it has to be vetted.
Yeah.
I think you could just say would be negligible, not have to be shown as negligible. You just say would be negligible.
Yeah.
Second, next line down,
Oh.
Yeah, it's just would be
would be
negligible.
negligible. Right,
Yeah.
fewer words the better.
So we keep the height buffer in place. Majority of the time, the height buffer's gonna come into play because it exists, but on the off chance that some project comes up.
So we have to somehow say that, because we're not quite saying that, right?
We
Are we saying that?
are not saying that yet, and so we need to get to the idea of having the discretion to make that determination. And so now,
Well, that's what this says, basically, when two different height limits are there. The lower one applies unless we make these findings.
yeah, that's right. So
And we leave the table as is then, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I
That's
think it's just the question is still the amount, because that's what we're still talking about in the scope of this amendment. The amount up to.
Well, do we have to specify an amount, or can they,
the amount is whatever doesn't affect
whatever they
anything.
can make the case for?
Yeah.
Unless we want to put a lower limit on it, or upper limit.
but then
however
they
you
still,
wanna frame
and they
it.
still have to abide by setbacks
I
and
guess
open
it's-
space and
Yeah.
everything
It's
else
still
that's in place.
allowing it up to what amount, depending upon the orientation? Or are you suggesting that you'd only determine that after reviewing an application?
Yeah, we review an application and, maybe they don't need the,
The amount is 200, 150, 100. If they prove their case that by a shadow study and a glare study, that this doesn't,
and we can reduce it.
to where we think it doesn't affect,
Right, right,
and then we'll go from there.
right.
And if that doesn't work, we'll have to amend it again next year. 'Cause, this is one here that I could not.
This
the
is
nu-
better than picking a number.
The number I couldn't
Better than
understand.
choosing.
We'll just get rid of
Yeah.
the 50, 30.
Yeah, I mean, the
And
number
the process.
made no
And then
sense to me.
The other amendment in that table is just for consistency, by
The
the way.
way that they're written.
Oh, northerly between.
The
Yeah.
current, the current
Yeah.
bylaw says
Yeah,
between.
that made sense.
That's all that is.
I understand that one.
Okay.
And in reality, it's just deciding between competing heights that already exist in the zoning bylaw.
Right.
It's not setting a new height or creating anything new, it's just giving us the discretion to choose between
Yeah.
things.
So we're not
as may
reducing
be
anything, we're
appropriate.
not creating anything by right.
No, No, we're not adding to heights or density decisions. It's just
Which is-
clarifying a way to make a decision.
Right, we're just giving us more discretion about where the lower and higher
Yeah.
heights go.
Okay.
So I added just that last phrase, would be negligible to allow the higher height limit. Because again, there's two, where the height buffer applies, there's two heights that are allowed. So that finding would allow you to.
So they could ask us to make that determination?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that gets to what we're discussing.
I think so too.
Yeah. So that's really not changing anything that already exists. It's just,
And we'll do the,
Giving the
we'll
board
do the
more
point
control.
of measurement next year, or?
Board shall
yeah, that I don't think
must
we can do
find.
within the scope of this warrant article.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
We'll just
We can-
tell them when they apply.
We can,
Well, we don't need the measure at the moment anyhow, because we're doing it based upon impact.
that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yep. So that one we would move to town meeting as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Are we halfway?
So we're at 9:30.
No, not time-wise, I'm talking about,
No. We have 20, wait, no, almost. We'll get there. Moving on to Article 12, which is corner lot requirement.
is this what's in red?
No, everything that's underlined.
Oh,
So I can, explain this. It's helpful.
Yeah, why don't you explain this? What we read?
Okay, so the current bylaw states that corner lots shall have on the lot lines that have frontage, the setback shall be the same as the required front yard depth for the lot that is adjacent and might be in a different zoning district. So what the underlying statement that starts with however, however, in the higher density residential districts and all of the business districts, the requirement for corner lots on this lot lines that have frontage, the requirement would be the front yard depths of the district that lot is located in, as opposed to the current condition, which is the front yard depth of the adjacent lot, which may be in a different zoning district.
So,
Is likely to be based upon the zoning map.
Yeah.
so if you can build right up to the lot line, this would allow you to build right up to the corner lot line too, even if there's a R456 right there.
Adjacent to it.
Adjacent to it. I would be more comfortable with this if it wasn't the 456, but only the business districts. So it would say, however, in the business districts, a corner lot. Because I'm a little concerned about if this is something that's abutting the R districts and you've got houses there with setbacks. And somebody talked about this at one of the public hearings too. You're creating not only a little bit of an anomaly, but a little bit of a potential safety problem.
We have a driveway issue.
Right,
Yeah.
a driveway issue. So I don't know how to fix all of that, but I would fix it by removing the R4, 5, and 6, and 7 and just say in all the business districts. And that's just my suggestion, and I'm not sure that's the right
I'm just trying to
suggestion.
understand this a little bit, because this got me a little confused there. A corner lot, the two, the both of them are considered front lots, right?
That's right.
And then the two, the other two edges are considered side lots. There's no rear lot. Just two side lots, two front lots. The front lot that faces the business district is fine, whatever that is, it is. We're not affecting it by this. What we're saying is that the other front lot that is adjacent to a lower
R4
High-density residential area.
high-density residential area, right? But wouldn't there be a setback already from that property line to that? So it's already, so it's not lot line to lot line, it's just from that corner, the outside corner, to wherever the setback is. It doesn't go all the way back to the residential lot, right? Because there's still a setback there,
Right.
right? So it's not a complete, no, but I'm just trying to show you, if you look at this one here on page number 5,
Yep.
okay? Just imagine that L-shaped building there as a corner lot. And let's say with R2 and B4, that front one there, that is, let's say that is Mass Ave or whatever that is.
This is massive.
No, I'm just, okay.
Another Mass Ave.
Yeah, okay.
Two Mass
So,
Two Mass Ave.
so that is, that's the front lot line, it's 0 and it's right against it. See how there's a setback here? It doesn't go all the way back to the, where this is, where they say that could be residential, because there's the setbacks. You can't build within that setback of the other property. Is that true?
So, if I might use the 2 Mass Aves as an example, and say that this is, even though,
No,
Say
forget,
that's-
the other one's not Mass Ave, so the other
yeah,
one's,
whatever. So this is whatever street.
yeah,
So, there would be a setback required here based on whatever district this is. I say it's a business district.
Mhm, and
this
it's
is like
0.
Okay, it's 0. And then this frontage, because it is on a corner lot, there is an adjacent,
that's also business.
well, it may not be business.
No, I'm just saying it is.
If it's business, then no big deal.
Right, then
Then, or what, I'm talking about the one down below now, right
This
there.
guy?
Yeah, that guy there is residential.
So if that guy is residential, then the setback required on that residential property would be required on this street frontage.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
No, but what I'm saying is, if this street frontage, right, has no setback,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say this is residential, should this have no setback, or should this have some setback, because...
I'm arguing that it should not
I
have
know, that's what I'm
setback.
asking.
I'm arguing that it should not have setback, that the setbacks is taken care of from here back to here, because now you're making all the corners wider. You're pushing all the corners wider. And you're losing this avenue to, I'm not saying, I never said canyon. Okay, but we're losing some of this rhythm, okay? And just because all along Mass Ave, it's just one zone back that's all different. That's just the way the zoning map's shown right now.
And it's different from block to block.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're changing, I'd rather just leave the setback that it is right now, prevail, and just leave it as a front yard setback.
So you're okay with this change?
I don't think it's a change. I think that this is existing, right?
Anything that's underlined, so the phrase starting with, the sentences starting with however, that's all new.
Yeah. I would agree with you if this corner lot happened in a R4, R5 area, then let's not do it there. But if it's in a business district,
Well, that's what I was saying.
So if we left it the way it
That's what I was
was,
saying.
no, but you're saying set it back though, wouldn't it?
but if we left it the way it was, it would solve the issue that you're talking about. Because on that side of the building, it would pull it back to be the same as the residential properties on that block, on that side of the building, right? And but the new language would allow that side of the building to come out further, because both sides of the building are in, the B district, even though there's an R district right behind it.
So you're saying just get rid of the additional?
Well, I mean, the additional sentence creates the issue that you raised, and that some of the public comment raised.
Mhm.
I would just leave the business,
I might leave things as they are.
I leave the business right at both sides that don't have anything affected. But in our districts, yes, I agree with you there.
Well, so that's.
But that
was
means just
my-
leave it the way it is, I think.
Well,
The amendment, you mean?
no,
No,
Or leave it
I
as
mean,
is,
leave,
as is. as-
get rid of the amendment.
You-
Dave.
So then.
So
you
vote
would
no
need
action.
To vote no
Yeah,
action.
okay.
yeah.
I'm
I
just
think
trying to
I'd-
understand,
I
because
think
we
I'd be
keep
okay with
referring to
voting no
that,
action
saying
on this
leave it
one.
as is.
This is one that I don't know requires changing.
I'm okay with just leaving.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
So I motion that no action to be taken on amendment, Article 12.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just wondering about that.
13.
13.
I move,
No action.
Second.
Nothing else needs to be done there.
No, it's all moved.
No action
to
necessary.
16.
I'll move to 16. So we have Jean with a motion, Kim with a second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
14. We should,
Is there any
Parking Reduction Act. ability.
questions about this?
So this is an administrative change.
No, we need to do this.
Yeah, this is one that we need to move on. An administrative change that adds R7 to reduction of parking space requirements. It was an oversight when the parking reduction was initially put in place.
So this will just
This is
add
just correcting
R7.
a mistake to add R7 included in there to be consistent with the other districts in town, the other.
So I move
zoning
it,
bylaws.
I move it as provided.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. All right, now comes the big one. One of the big ones. Accessory dwelling units, Article 15.
You might want to
Well,
vote
should
on
we-
Yeah, you
16
have to
now.
actually.
Oh, we should vote on 16, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
I move Article 16 is amended.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna do 16 after 15, but, okay.
And then at the prior discussion, had an impact on the discussion from 16,
Right.
just to be clear.
Okay.
Because that's why we went back through everything
Right,
first.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just to
now
make
we're
sure.
about halfway done.
Yes.
Thank you.
Checking in on that.
So let's talk about accessory dwelling units and how we might amend this particular article based on the discussion we heard the other night to alleviate some of the concerns.
Do I have a list somewhere here? I don't have it here.
Oh, this is because we only printed this
What was,
document.
what was the number of the accessories?
50.
15.
I can give you what we think about the other. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I know, Aaron's putting it in his screen, but-
Oh,
I can also turn my computer screen
No,
towards
no, that's
you.
all right. No, I actually see better far away than close. If that makes any sense to you.
It does.
Yes. Just the other way.
Can I ask a couple of questions right off the front?
Yeah, why don't you start?
The accessory unit, right, is only allowed by special permit.
Yes. That's right. So that won't lead to builders coming in and adding them to tear downs because that would require an additional special permit.
And well, it's also locked down as of this date, which was not in the draft that we had at.
February 14th, 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
When we posted
Okay.
the
Yep.
notice.
And the unit size that you're adding, it cannot be greater than 750 square feet.
Right.
Gross. Okay. And
Yes.
if the house sells, would they are they grandfathered in on
So if you
that?
have a special permit, it carries with the sale, subject to a condition of the sale. If it changes, the use changes, and they have to come back in.
Yeah, but it's
Well, I
gonna
think
be,
the way it's structured, the buyer would have to,
Is that the way it's structured, or was that one of the suggestions?
I don't know, I'm asking.
no, I think it's, doesn't
You
it
put
say
the
that?
word
know
in
that's
there
been
actually.
changed. Okay,
And
so
it
that
was
is
a
in there.
suggestion made by.
Okay, well, it can't be, the dwelling unit and accessory unit can't be sold or otherwise conveyed separately, so you can't sell that 750
Yeah,
square foot
shall
unit
remain
as an
enforced
R2.
only if all requirements of this continue to be met and the new property owner submits to the building inspector a notarized affidavit signed under the pains and penalties of perjury, et cetera. So they do have to recertify.
So they have to recertify, but it's not a reapplication.
No.
Right, which makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but they have to, but the key is, the person who buys it has to live there in order to make that accessory unit work.
That's right, it has to be unoccupied.
They have to live in one of the two units.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, just because someone converted it into a accessory unit, then sells it,
They can't sell the accessory unit.
no, sell the whole building.
Mm-hmm.
It says, I'm done, I'm moving, you know? And then the guy who buys it, he doesn't live there, the accessory unit goes away.
Can't be used.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the end of that unit.
Yep.
It has to be recertified. You can't live alone like that, even at this time of sale. It wouldn't work.
Okay. And there were some issues that were brought up last time about making it only for families. And also, after that, it had to be affordable. And then it could go into market.
For a certain period of time.
Yeah, I don't know, we can talk about that. I just wasn't sure how that,
So the family issue is a fair housing issue that we cannot put in here, just to be clear about that.
Mhm.
The affordability issue, we can talk about separately. I just
Okay.
want to put that out there.
oh, so we can't make it say
Restricting to
restricted only for
family.
like grandmother or
By the way, that's
in-law.
a very specific definition in our bylaw now based on recodification
Mhm.
that is up to date
Okay.
and modern.
I don't
Thank
think, I
you.
don't think it makes any sense to limit it to family.
No, I'm just,
I know.
I'm just trying to bring it up
I
and
know.
just, you know.
Yeah, I just think there are a lot of instances where somebody's going to either want to live in the accessory unit and rent out the house or vice versa, and none of their family members wants to move in.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to do it.
If they have the space,
Right.
if they meet the criteria.
If they meet all the
If they
criteria.
want to spend the money to go
Right.
through the process. And I don't think we're gonna see a rash of single-family homes being put up with an extra 750 square foot that might be used as a
And-
room, if somebody either wants to permit it or if the builder wants to.
And you
have it.
can't do it because the building has to have been in existence as of February 14, 2019. So this boogeyman
Mhm.
that builders are going to start building houses.
Well, they're
with
going to do
accessory
tear
units.
downs and then.
But they can't do
Yeah,
it.
right.
They can't do
They
it.
can't
Because
do
they
it.
can't actually apply for that special permit. They leave it up to the person buying the place to
but-
deal with the construction. and
But the building must have been existing as of
Right.
this February, so builders cannot start building.
So all new
So that
houses.
puts-
Cannot
are-
have
That puts an
Can't have.
extremely small number of houses in town into play as to where these could exist.
I was
So-
thinking, at the cheapest possible way of doing this, let's say you had a big enough house, so you're not gonna increase the footprint, and you had a spare bathroom, so you're not creating a bathroom. So all you need to do is add a kitchen. A kitchen, a basic small little kitchen that fits in a 750 square foot place and partition and everything else, it's gonna be about $25,000 to $30,000.
And do you have to have a separate means of egress?
Yes,
Yeah.
you do.
Two means.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
got to do that. You can't do
Yeah.
it too.
Yeah,
So
so
it's, and
you're looking at $50,000 to $60,000 at that point.
No, 25, 30,000 cheap. I mean, you're not gonna, it's not gonna be a great kitchen, but it's, it could be a stove, refrigerator, and most of the infrastructure's there. I'm just trying to figure out if someone's gonna do it, the reasons they're gonna do it for is not because of economical things, it's because they wanna bring someone in, and can they afford it or not? And I think I'm following the same thing you're saying, it's gonna be very small
I think there's a small number of places in town.
that this can happen, it's not gonna,
Where they could happen. And I don't think we're going to see a rash.
There are a lot of houses that aren't big enough because it can't exceed 33% of the gross floor area.
Mhm.
It can't exceed 750 square feet. There are a lot of single-family homes that can't
Mhm.
fit
And
it in now.
even with rent being what it is, rent for a 750 square foot apartment wouldn't pay for the,
Without a stove.
without a stove.
So, do we need to do anything more on the enforceability side?
I had a couple suggestions.
So I think, go ahead and just let me say one thing. I think making these legal and requiring them to go through the special permit process
Yeah.
adds to the enforceability of these and the safety
Yeah.
of them, because they have to meet a certain criteria to be approved, or they don't exist.
Sure.
And that gives a tool to the enforcement agencies and to the fire department to know where these units are in town and to be able to respond appropriately if necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that argument about the fire department not knowing where they were was a red herring, because if they're permitted, then
Mhm.
the town does know
Yeah.
where they are.
Then they're
and-
permitted, they've been viewed,
Yeah,
they've gone through the process, they've met all the criteria to get the permit from not only
Yeah.
the ARB, but whatever
but
building
we
permits
would
are
want
required.
to, I mean, I don't know if we need to add anything, but presumably the inspectional services would work with the fire department to make sure that that information transfer happened.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can't answer that
Yeah.
here.
yeah, we
because
can't require the fire
we-
department to do
yeah,
anything,
so
but we can certainly
the-
add it.
But the other thing is, I mean, I don't know, but I'm gonna guess that units like this exist in town already.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, is there anything we can do either as an incentive or a disincentive to try to bring those units into the permitted scheme? Because that would make it safer
Mhm.
for everybody to not have units that nobody knows about existing out there.
Go ahead, Jenny.
There is a way to address that actually, and other communities, when adopting bylaws like this, often have to consider what you're talking about, and they call it an amnesty program, whereby for the first year of the existence of the bylaw, they have an amnesty period where people can bring a unit that previously existed into compliance with the new laws.
And if they don't,
They have to tear it down.
That's a separate issue. Yes, it would be the same as any non-compliance issue that's found in zoning. That's not, that's how it's enforced. I'm not the building inspector, but that's an issue of non-compliance with the bylaw.
And so would any amnesty period be part of this, or would that be up to?
Well, that's something we haven't talked about until now. So we could talk about an amnesty period potentially being added,
Or inspectional services could just declare them.
or it could be declared as such, exactly,
Yeah, that's
upon,
We don't need to put it
depending
in.
I don't know if
upon
we
the
need to put
nature
it
of
in
things.
there.
I don't
Yeah.
think it
If
needs
we
to
could
be
put it in
captured
there.
in a zoning
Right.
bylaw.
Right.
anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't have any other specific suggestions, so I'll defer to Gene.
Can I go through? I have a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
First, I think the staff did a really nice job taking the initial one and incorporating a lot of the comments along the way. I know some people think these are bad ideas, but I actually think with a lot of these changes, they're really good ideas. I have a few suggested changes. In A3, there's nothing here that quite says you can't expand the existing dwelling. It's sort of implied but not explicit. So I think maybe somewhere in here, it might be in 3 or somewhere else, I had suggested maybe at the end of 3, and a single-family dwelling unit may not otherwise be expanded in size. Because what we don't want people to do is build a big bump out on the back with the accessory unit. The idea is it's within the current footprint.
I thought I read somewhere saying that the
Yeah, I
gross
think
square
it's-
footage couldn't increase.
It does, it says it in
It
3.
says that.
No, it doesn't.
Contained within the gross floor area of the
Where-
dwelling existing at the time of the permit application.
But-
What's your?
Must be
But
contained.
it doesn't, but that's sort of,
At the time of, is it?
So if they
It
have
does
this,
say-
if they have something
Yeah.
now that they can use, they can add a means of egress.
right, but
Or-
but I'd like that to say, blah, 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 blah. In the egress and the single-family dwelling unit may not otherwise be expanded in size. or the building structure may not otherwise be expanded in size, or something like that.
I thought it said that. Maybe
I
I'm
don't
wrong.
think, I don't, well, tell me where it says that. It says the gross floor area of the accessory unit cannot exceed
Yeah, no, I know.
33%.
It's of the principal dwelling. That's part of I think the principal dwelling, number 3.
Of the principal dwelling, and
Yeah.
I think it should say, and the principal dwelling may not, and except for the addition of a second means, and then maybe say, and the
Right.
principal dwelling may not otherwise be expanded in size.
It is AL.
Principal.
And I think we could just say the structure may not otherwise be expanded in size, or the building envelope, or whatever the right term is.
Except for the addition or other modification.
Well, it would say something
Oh,
like
I
in
see.
3,
The structure
right?
may not be
Otherwise
otherwise
expanded.
expanded. After state building code.
Right, right,
Yes,
right.
I understand.
So, I don't know if I mean, I understand the reason it's contained within the gross floor area. You don't want somebody building an outbuilding or dwelling out there. But if somebody wanted to go through the process of building an addition for, grandma to move in, then I don't know that we'd want to necessarily limit them from doing that. I think it's an extremely small amount of people that would do that, homeowners that would do that to begin with.
That's what that exception would address what you're talking about.
Okay.
It's, Jean's point is that you can't otherwise expand the principal dwelling unit,
Okay.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's.
Okay, I think
that's an
I
important
understand what you're saying.
addition,
All right.
to make it clear, that wouldn't happen.
So I think, I don't think it's to be decided here, but when we talk about what's going to be required as part of the registration and permit process, we'll get to come up with that. And I think the idea of providing a lease is appropriate. I don't think we need to do that in the zoning bylaw.
I think it's,
Yeah, we can.
well, we talked about 7.
So hang on, so would this allow someone to expand their home and then apply to make it an ADU?
See, I don't want that to happen. My concept for this is, there's an existing building. If you have enough room in that existing building to put in an ADU, compliant with everything, you can put it in. What you shouldn't be able to do is expand.
Put
the
an
building.
addition.
Put an addition on for the purpose of doing the ADU. You disagree with that, right?
I disagree with that, but I can certainly see it from both perspectives.
I'm not supportive of this either way, but I will go with the board's findings. Because I don't think the accessory unit is the way to go to increase the housing stock.
Yeah, I think it's going to have a limited impact.
I think it has a limited impact.
But that's why I'm saying I will go with, if you guys feel like that's the way, I will swing that way.
My thought is, we do it in a limited fashion, see how many people do it. If some people do it, and it doesn't cause all the problems that people have been talking about.
Right, and I know the
Right.
numbers and reality of the towns similar to Arlington that have permitted these
Are pretty small.
are minuscule. They're,
Well, didn't we get an example that in Newton, this was done and there's only 5 permits?
10.
10
Yeah.
permits.
The study
Yeah.
demonstrates.
I mean,
that
I
it's
think if you allow people to build additions and then turn them into ADUs, that could create an issue with
it could
developers.
create an issue, but you're building, you're building a studio apartment, essentially, without a stove.
Well, this needs a stove. This has to have a stove.
It has to be a full.
Doesn't want to-
Full
It doesn't have an oven.
Oven, stove, whatever those
Yeah.
things are called.
I might also suggest that if a single-family dwelling existing as of February 14, 2019 is changed since that date, it wouldn't trigger this allowance. And that person might have to seek a variance
Mhm.
to avoid to get around February 14th.
Well, just, see, the thing is, this language, the single-family dwelling might exist as that date, but you're not saying the footprint as it existed
Right.
at that
Someone
date.
could have plans.
And I thought that was what we were initially
That's
trying
what-
to
that's-
do.
You're right. That's
Not
what we're
just
trying
that
to
the
do.
dwelling existed, but that we're talking about the actual building and footprint
Thank
that
you.
existed.
That's what I've been trying to say.
Right,
Thank you.
okay.
So they don't build a new building that can accommodate this later
Yeah.
on?
Right,
Yeah. And that's the situation we would be turning an R1 into an R2.
right.
Yes, and we don't want to do
We
that.
don't want that.
So I think we need to work on this language a little bit more.
So is it in a single-family dwelling as it existed, as of?
No, it can't be as it
I mean,
existed.
I don't know.
It can't be as it existed because,
Well, what, to get to your issue of the footprint?
As built or permitted prior to.
maybe it just needs to be one of the additional numbers,
What's that?
provided the conditions are met. Number one, you know, the footprint of the building has not been expanded after February 14, 2019.
That's logical.
That's pretty clear.
Right, that I think takes care of it.
And then that, of course, if given that
All right,
an
so,
addition or a second piece of
Or-
use or other
so,
modification
so
Or-
that's, so it, that's not good enough.
The
I
gross
was just
floor
think-
area, I
I was
think.
just thinking,
They could build up.
they could build up,
Yeah.
right, so that's not gonna do it. We have to say the envelope, is it
Volume,
the volume,
Build-
square footage?
the square footage?
gross floor area. Is that
Gross floor area.
Yeah, Okay, that's
There were
good.
all the other references,
right,
all the other conditions reference GFA.
right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
good. That's better.
That
than-
that works for me.
So my other comments, if we could move down, I'm not sure what the number is now, it's now 5. I'm a little concerned about the owner can only be gone for temporary absences of no more than 3 months in any 16-month period. Let's say the person goes to Florida for 3 months every winter.
Yeah.
I think it has to be 3 months in every 12-month period, because that's like, the person can't go on vacation, basically. So that was my suggestion about that.
Being the landlord is
I might even,
verification.
What-
Is there a mechanism for granting exceptions to that in
I might
individual
even say 6
circumstances?
months, given travel and people who may own 2 homes that have a.
I'm good with 6 months too. I
We could go to
just
6
wasn't-
months instead of 3.
Yeah, I was just wasn't good
That way,
with 60 months.
Or 6 months. and
You could
then
take out
all
the time requirement and just say the owners of the structure must, I'm thinking of principal residence. Must occupy and use the home as their principal residence.
Then that's 6 months and 1 day.
Yeah, exactly. But there are people that split time, there are people that live or travel frequently.
I'm okay with that.
I think I would say, yeah, change it to a principal residence requirement.
As their principal residence, not
The
primary.
owners of the structure in which the accessory dwelling unit is located must claim one of the dwelling units as their principal residence.
Period.
Get rid of temporary absences.
Principal, not primary.
Yeah. So, what do you use for
And
taxes
that
and
then
filing
is
homestead?
certified essentially with the issuance
Yeah.
of the C of
Oh, so,
O. Right?
Yeah, you
When
have to
go
change
down
it to
there, yeah,
principal
we need to just
down
change
in-
that.
yeah.
Does this still have to go up to our review too?
Affidavit.
Or does this just give them the right of to do that?
It's special permit, so they'll still have to come before us to,
Or the
or the
ZBA.
ZBA.
It's, I think
Mostly the
it's-
ZBA.
It's gonna be the
I think it's
ZBA.
only the
It's gonna be the
ZBA
ZBA.
particular case because it's
Yeah.
ours
Okay.
on R1. It's only
Yeah.
the zoning.
Yeah, so it's a ZBA issue. So,
I'm just curious to see how many permits are going to be.
yeah.
well,
So the other issue that
Do you
came
think
up,
claim one of the dwelling units of the principal residence means they must occupy it for more than 6 months?
they have to use it for 6 months, plus it has to
Okay.
be their principal, they have to
Okay.
live there.
Okay,
So not just be there, but live there for
Okay.
6 months plus 1 day.
okay. My next comment was in, where's the number there? Oh, that wasn't my comment, that was yours. My next comment, so there was some discussion about the building inspector and not being able to inspect, so why don't we just put in an inspection clause? The one I thought of was the office of the building inspector, everyone who says this, may with at least 24 hours advance notice in writing, inspect a dwelling during normal business hours to confirm compliance with section 5.9.2.
Can't do that.
Why not?
You can't just go into a house and inspect.
You can if you get a special permit.
No, but yeah, if they got a special permit, they're following all the rules. But let's say they don't follow the rules. That's what you're talking about, right?
So if they don't follow the rules and the building inspector says, I'm coming in, and they say, you can't come in, then the building inspector can go to court and get an administrative warrant.
But they can do it already. They can do that already.
Well, I don't think they can do that unless there's something that gives them the right to inspect.
I think they can do that already if they think that there's like any sort of code
All right.
violation.
So
Yeah,
we
they
can-
must, they must
so
be
we can-
able to
so we
They
can-
have to,
any
they
code.
can
Alright,
do
so
anything,
then
so
let's-
if you have a
okay.
basement.
So then we don't need that then.
No,
It's one of those things that they don't need a
So we
warrant
don't
for
need that
anything.
then.
yeah, they have the right to do
All
that.
right, so the one about the annual notarized affidavit, I think it should say on a form provided by the
What?
town. I think it should
Oh.
say on a form provided by the town, because we don't want people to be just sending in their own affidavits. I think it should say on a form provided by the town.
Do we need to put that in the bylaw, or can we do that administratively and have the department come up with something that's going to certify that?
I would suggest that we're now into like a process that could be a separate sort of application scenario, and that might be there, but it could
That's-
also live here too.
I
Just
think
to
it can live here.
I don't know.
I'm okay with it living here, I
It
don't
doesn't
want to
have to live
confuse the
here. I
bylaw
think
with
it
the
makes
process.
it better.
Okay.
Those are my only comments on that.
What about the question of restricting these to affordable rents? And do we want to make some sort of provision here in the zoning bylaw that limits it to some percentage of median area income?
My feeling is no.
I'm
Number
against
one,
that.
I think it's, that gets very hard to enforce. And secondly, let's say the person who owns the home wants to move into the accessory unit.
Yeah.
Then what do you do with the other
Okay.
unit?
The only reason I brought it up, and I'm not in favor of it, is I know it was an issue that was discussed both during and after Monday night's hearing.
It also makes them a lot less likely if they're affordable and you have to spend $20,000 to $50,000 to
Right.
create one.
Not gonna.
I don't expect that to. Okay. Any further comments? I think we've discussed most of the issues. Ken, David,
I already told you my opinion.
you're allowed to dissent.
I mean, I think
I'll go
we,
with the board this.
I think we've addressed many of the concerns that have been raised by the public. So, I'd like to see what town meeting thinks about it.
Okay.
I move what are we saying?
Move as amended to recommend
As
to
amended
town
to
meeting.
recommend to town meeting, Article 15.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So, 10 o'clock. The next big one we have to discuss is sign regulations. I know, Gene, you have some discussion of that.
Only a
Or-
little bit, actually,
Okay. Okay, let's move into sign regulations then, and we'll begin with you.
when you find where they are.
Which one sign?
Signs.
Signs.
Here.
Which number?
Sign bylaw, 17.
This one that back. I didn't mark it off.
That's fine, and this was the police station.
I'm thinking David's going to have more comments than I have on this.
Well, I
think
pretty
they were
much went
submitted.
through all of my
Yeah.
comments.
We captured them from the zoning bylaw.
Yeah, I appreciate both of you providing comments on this early, because it is a hefty,
It is. I'd almost forgotten about it until I saw it on the rundown tonight. Not entirely, but.
I might. Sorry, what number is this?
This is
17,
another one
17.
where I think the staff did a really nice job.
I agree.
Incorporating multiple difficult comments into this.
Sincerely thank Erin on this one for her steady work, particularly with the consultant and all the contributions that came from the zoning bylaw working group. It really was phenomenal in the amount of time that was put into it. And so I just want to thank Erin myself as well.
I thought I had one or two minor comments, but maybe I didn't.
Can we just go through a little bit? I just want to make sure we captured. So let's go to 6.2.2. Let's see. So permanent sign permits. So we got the reference to 6 change of copy. Okay, yeah, okay. That's the termination section. You fix that, yeah.
yep.
Then the reference in B2,
B2?
B2 to 8, yeah, that's there. Oh, the commercial blocks, what
Yeah.
do we do about that?
So, what we did was that we just, this phrase that's in the cross out,
Mhm.
and then what continues into the second bullet, was thought to be restrictive in that, there could not be more than one temporary wall banner sign along 150 linear feet, and then in addition to that, the property manager or the property owner would have to decide which of the tenants were allowed that.
Yeah.
So we deleted that requirement that there can only be one within a block. And we also deleted the requirement that a property manager or property owner would be required to make a decision on which tenant would get that. So as it says now, an application for a temporary sign permit must be filed with inspectional services by a business owner or property owner on behalf of the business, period. And then each tenant in a multi-tenant building is entitled to a temporary wall banner sign in accordance with this section.
That works for me.
So it doesn't create a situation where if there's one vacant tenant, or one tenant that just moved in and is putting up a temporary sign while the permanent sign is being fabricated, and another new tenant moves in, it doesn't prevent that second new tenant from putting up their own temporary sign.
Okay.
I have a few.
No, I'm still.
You're still going?
I'm still going through.
Okay.
Okay, 6.2.3B.
B3?
B,
Or
B, let's see, B5, was anything changed? No. B8, no, that was correct. Yep, that got fixed. C3, holiday lighting.
holiday, we took out the word holiday.
Okay, oh, yeah, down in C6, got it. I'm just scrolling really fast because I have the pages flagged where I had a question. I think that's okay. No, that's fixed. Definitions. That was it?
Okay, Gene.
So this bothered me before, and I'm not sure what to do with it. There's no definition of permanent sign. So
You're at
there's
6.2.2.
6.2.2. So there's not really a definition of temporary sign, except it seems to indicate duration of temporary sign is 60 days, more or less. But I don't know how one goes about defining them, but I could not find a definition of permanent sign or temporary sign.
So sign, permanent, following the construct of our definitions. So what Jenny and I discussed in doing is adding,
okay.
meeting the standards of section 6.2.5, and then there should be temporary here, meeting the
good.
standards of section
Okay.
6.2.6.
Thank
So
you.
that's how we address that.
Okay, thanks. So they do exist. In what's was it 6.2.2b2, I'm just wondering, there's temporary sign permits, and then it says there are no time limitations for A-frame or upright signs installed in public right-of-ways for which a temporary sign permit is required. I'm wondering why there are no time limitations.
We put no time limitations on A-frames and upright signs because they are typically signs that are brought in and out each day. And then the message might change based on, the sandwich special or the sale of the month or whatever. So for that reason, we did not include time limitations because these signs are designed to be moved around more than something that is affixed to a building.
Makes sense to me. Let me see if I had anything else. As I say, I didn't have very many. Oh, I like that we exempted residential, but then when you look at a lot of the tables, they have residential in them. And I don't know if there's a way to do something about that or not.
So if I take like
Allowed type of signs by sign district.
Oh.
For example, in residential, but we've exempted residential.
We've exempted
That mean- non-illuminated,
non-commercial signs.
Right. So it's, I mean, it might be okay to keep it, but it's a little weird that we've exempted them and then you go through and seem to unexempt them in places.
Yeah, I think it gets to the difference between a commercial message versus a non-commercial message, which is also somewhat tempered by if it's a home occupation, which was a note
Right,
that
which
you
you
had
added
made.
in. Yeah, thank you for doing that. That was it. Those are the only comments I had.
Thank you, Gene and David. Ken, did you have any comments? I've already said my piece on that, so move that as amended or as
There was no amendment,
no amendments?
not that I know of.
I don't think I made anything
Since-
sitting here.
Okay,
No,
so as presented.
move to advance Article 17 as presented to town meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So Articles 18 and 19 work together. We reviewed those at the behest of the Conservation Commission. We can discuss those independently or together. I had no comment on either, but they were well drafted. I think they added additional protections to what already exists and brings the zoning bylaw into sync with the Concom.
These red lines are part of this update directions or?
What he's looking at.
Yes, however, I will point out that in preparation for this hearing, we received a comment at a hearing that some sentences through recodification were lost, so we've added those back in. This is in the floodplain district, under C special permit. So that,
Just to be clear about that, the loss of them, we had taken, this was what's required for a special permit. Those were sort of administrative amendments that we moved all of that to an earlier section of the bylaw for the whole bylaw. So at that point, we moved it out of this bylaw for that reason. The one clause that seems to be important to this that was removed as part of that, inadvertently, of course, is that you can't do there can be no movement of earth, basically, until you actually go through these steps as part of the process. So we really need to add that back in.
Okay.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
Just to rectification. That's-
Yeah, I had no comments on the two sections.
And then in the inland wetland district, this was a comment from Eugene
Yeah, I
to
saw you did that.
include reference to the Wetlands Protection Act. I also included reference to the bylaw, the local bylaw, just to cover all of our bases. It
Yeah.
gets a little bit wordy, but it's all in
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
Although I think we don't have any differences between the state, but that's fine.
Just in case in the future there might be.
And we didn't want to group those two together because it became even more cumbersome as one.
Mhm. Yeah, I was fine with both
So
of those
it's
articles.
repetitive, but necessary.
And beyond that, this is the same as has been seen.
You okay?
I have no comments.
Can I just move the,
Do them individually.
motion to move 18 to town vote,
Town meeting?
town meeting?
Vote, motion,
As provided.
As provided.
Sorry, as provided.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Article 19,
Move the motion, Article 19 to town meeting,
As
as provided.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Article 20, review of religious and educational uses. This is the Dover Amendment article, been discussed several times. Jenny, can you
Yeah.
talk to us about what town council provided?
So I think that we have that. Is this with the amendments?
So this includes the language that Doug suggested should the ARB decide that they want to retain jurisdiction over these uses. I think that's the best way to state that.
Yeah. The key part is he highly discouraged a site plan review by the board. That would not be in keeping with what we were trying to do and what we believe is required under state law, and it would create a confusing communication about what we are saying we don't do, but then we would end up doing it here, which would trigger a public process, even though I understand what that might mean to you, but that doesn't have the same meaning for this particular use. So he was highly discouraging of moving in that direction, and that's essentially what his memo outlines,
Okay. including
some case studies.
No, I think that.
So he provided basically his suggestions, which are now up there on the screen, are the way of handling this without getting into the troubling area of the level of, the depth of review that you had originally, that we had discussed during the hearing.
I thought that looked good. Now, I was a little concerned that I thought it should be clearer if I understand how this process works, and if I don't, help me out here. So there's one of the uses subject to the Dover Amendment goes to the building inspector.
Building inspector first.
If they meet all the requirements for that particular district, it should never come to us. They should only come to us when height, bulk, parking, something is outside what they're allowed to do in the district. So let me just stop there. Is that right?
Maybe. It really would depend upon our staff review of what is proposed and when we think there might be something in excess of what is in the bylaw,
Right.
what is allowed in the
Right,
bylaw.
but that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I don't want to necessarily name those things,
No, I
but
don't.
in excess of.
If the review is done and nothing's in excess of what's allowed in that district, it should never come to us.
Right.
It sort of says that, but it doesn't quite say that here.
Well,
And
it
I
pretty much
think-
says if they satisfy the building
If
inspector,
they're satisfied.
Yeah, then
they inform us
they
that it's-
inform, right, go ahead.
that, it says,
That it's.
building
that-
inspector shall inform us that a given
given
application is appropriate for administrative review.
And that's the point I'm trying to make,
Yeah.
which is, if, I may be wrong, but the way I understand this, he has two pathways. One pathway is, it meets all the requirements, there's no administrative review. The second pathway is, it doesn't meet some requirement, there is administrative review.
I think either way, it would actually have an administrative review.
Really?
He's just simply making a determination
Really?
about the use. That's the first step in the process, is the inspector has to claim the use and that the
They meet
differ
the- they
amendment
meet the
even
use.
applies. Yeah,
Right.
that's the minimum. That gets transferred over to us to work through all of the other
All right,
matters.
so you, all right, so it gets to you, you work through all the
Yes.
other matters, and you decide that it's in compliance. It never gets to us.
Well, I think we still, through this, what we're now, the sort of the middle ground is providing you with the notification, informing you about what is happening. So I think that could be, that's kind of that's the middle ground of informing you, but internally we are having that review.
But then
And
it says
yes.
the redevelopment board shall apply those requirements, so it seems like we have no option at that point. We have to do something.
That's the part
That's-
that's the part that confused me. There should be somewhere we never get it, I think, because there's
We should.
nothing to apply.
I think in most cases, we should never get.
Well, we don't
Some-
know.
Some narrow set of circumstances.
Well,
It
it
would
could
come
be
before
a
us.
lot of circumstances, but we don't know. But anyhow, there are some set of circumstances where we should never get it, I think, because it meets all the requirements of the zoning district, so there's nothing for us to do. And there are going to be others where it doesn't meet at least one requirement. And that's the part that I think it lacks clarity.
So I think in B1 and 2, the edit should go back to DPCD as completing this administrative review. There should potentially be either a C or a new 3 that says something along the lines of what you're saying,
Yeah,
that
can you-
if the department finds some word or some phrase to go
Can you just
placeholder.
talk to Doug about this?
We can.
Because
yeah, we can go
I-
back.
Because he should know this stuff really well too, and just, see if we can lay out that step a little better
Okay.
and with a little more clarity.
So we can table this one to Monday night as well, if we
We
want,
can
to
talk
get
about
some
it.
clarity from
Just
town
one
council.
other thing that was used in here a lot. There's a lot of places where it says, applying the regulations in accordance with the goals of the Arlington Master Plan or other development plans and policies of the town. And I think it's missing a key phrase. I think it should say, either before or after Arlington Master Plan, say, Arlington Master Plan, the purposes of this bylaw or other development plans and policies of the town. So about 4 or 5 or 6 places where it doesn't have the phrase purposes of this bylaw that I think need to get added.
And I think that we always would, every part of the bylaw has to go back to the purpose of the bylaw.
I know, but when you write specifically what we're supposed to be doing in reviewing it, I think we're missing something when we don't say the purposes of this bylaw.
Don't we say it in other places?
But not.
But I'm saying we use that language in other
We-
sections where we
no.
lay out the purpose.
I did look for that language when I initially drafted this, and we don't actually
But
use that
but
language.
this is
We
sort
use
of
this phrase, that's-
this is sort of a special thing, and I think we do need to say the purposes of this bylaw as part of it. So those were my only, basically, 2 comments on this.
So what are you saying? We should table this till Monday, and so
I
Doug
think
has
we
a chance
need,
to look at it?
yeah, I think we need additional comment from town council.
Yeah,
I think it's-
this is dangerous ground to be treading on
Yeah,
without advice of counsel.
sure.
Yes.
We can talk about it again.
Yeah, so we could table
And
Article
then based on the
20
new feedback.
to Monday night. And move to Article 21, bicycle parking.
What a great job.
Thank you, Gene and David, for your work on this.
And Aaron,
For a non-bicycle.
And
for
Dan.
and Dan.
So this is a bit different than how it was initially proposed. It still uses the construct of long-term bicycle parking and short-term bicycle parking. But we've bulked it up in some places. Maybe one of the larger changes is 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit for apartment buildings. But at the end, we have sections that set some basic standards related to this. So some of the important things that we've added is that the not requiring bicycle parking to be lifted off the floor or carrying bicycles up or down any steps or stairs. That the requirements of the section may not be satisfied within the residential dwelling unit, but residents may bring their bicycles into their dwelling unit for storage. And then we created a new type of reduction based on the use of the building to ensure that relates to whether the characteristics of the use, structure, or facility makes the use of bicycles unlikely or would substantially reduce the use of bicycles. So there's two ways that can that the requirement can be reduced.
So it's like the safety valve.
What's the number right now?
1.5 for apartment buildings.
And then any guest parking? Is there a requirement for guest parking?
It's on the chart.
So that's what the short term would be considered.
Okay, short, so, all right, so
Oh, it's on the chart too. I just had one wording
So it's,
change.
it's
Do
0.1
that
spaces per dwelling unit for short term for an apartment building.
Go ahead, Gene.
My only suggestion is
Minimum of one.
G4. I think, I may be wrong, but I think the word if the section should be shall rather than may, so while the requirements of the section shall not be satisfied.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That was my only suggested
That
change.
makes sense.
Yep. Okay. David? You worked on it.
No, I had no other comments. I'm pretty
No.
happy with
I
this.
think you all did a really excellent job on that, so I move
Good job,
that
guys.
forward. Thank you.
So I move that we move Article, was it 21? To
Mhm.
town meeting as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Right?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're getting there. Article 22, correct citation errors discovered as a result of moving from one document to the other. All of these are administrative changes. I don't think there's any.
We deleted what had been added and discussed on the March 4th hearing, which was like a couple of dates.
Yeah.
We deleted that from here. So it's just as
Okay.
originally presented. That's all.
Okay, good.
Move Article 22, town meeting,
As originally presented.
as originally presented, sorry.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 23, my understanding is that this is coming off, but I think we should still take a vote of no action on it.
Yes.
I
There is
move,
com- it's coming off?
withdrawn
It's been
articles.
withdrawn.
I move no action on Article 23.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
How come this is coming off?
Well, it doesn't, there are no withdraw, you can't withdraw an article, but we have to move it no action. Why? Because there was not, what was provided to us was that the zoning board of appeals is planning to post documents to notice of agenda, so therefore it's not necessary.
Oh,
to have
It's
the
not
bylaw.
necessary, and it really doesn't belong in the bylaw anyway. but-
Okay. Fine.
So you just need no action.
Yeah, which we did. Did we take a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
I think we were interrupted before we voted.
Sorry.
That's okay. Article 24 and 25 come from 10 registered voters, but they are at the impetus of the residential study group. I'll begin with Article 24, which discusses the definition of a half-story. This brings the town's zoning bylaw into compliance with the state building code. It's actually something that we had put forth 2 or 3 years ago and supported until we decided to revise the entire slate of articles. I don't have an issue with moving this one forward.
We got a correspondence from Kristen Klein
Yeah,
suggesting
I have
a
this.
couple changes to this.
Yes.
And I think they made, I don't know this, but he spoke about them too at the last meeting. It was pretty compelling, so unless somebody thinks they're a mistake, I'd suggest that we incorporate.
No, I think we should incorporate his.
Can we go over that one more time?
I think that.
These were his articles.
We have not shared, we have not talked about it, and this did come from the residential study group, it also comes from, it's a citizen petition technically. So, I mean, we can talk about it here, but we have not done that. I don't know about I have not looked into those amendments proposed further. I understand what you're saying.
The ones that Chris.
From Christian,
So May,
right, the other night.
can we table this till Monday so we can do that too, or not?
Do what?
Or she's not sure about incorporating
Get
this
an
and then.
opinion from
Did you have additional
Christian.
thoughts to add?
The way that the article is written is
can't do
pretty limiting.
Just on the
because
warrant article
it's
itself.
Oh, the
Literally
scope of the
reads
warrant
directly
article.
what we planned
Ah.
to do, so we can't add more to that. That's
Oh,
expanding the
okay.
scope.
Oh,
Okay.
I get it.
Got
I
it.
also don't know why it was, I understand what Christian said, but I would want to learn more about that within the scope of the article.
Well, if it's outside of the scope of the articles,
So
we'll
we
have to
take
get
it-
it the next,
so-
the next
So
Friday.
then I'll move Article 24 to town meeting as presented.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
I just sort of wish in the future that the residential study group would run these things by us earlier in the process, so we could have a real conversation with them about it.
Yes, and the residential study group is a subgroup of the MPIC, which is itself a subgroup of the ARB, and so all of this should be coming before us before it gets to this point, especially since it overlaps with our purview. And then the last one is, yeah,
I only made one.
I
Or-
didn't
No,
get it
actually, I
for
handed
whatever
this
reason.
out.
No, you
Yes,
handed,
this
you
is-
handed it out. So is this another problem
No,
with
I put it on
the,
the
is this
table.
another
I don't think
problem
I
with
got
with the scope?
It's yes, yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
The suggestions
The
that
email
were
from the
made by
engineer?
the town engineer and
an
inspectional
email.
studies could also be the policy that they
Okay.
use to measure this, but the scope is such that it's very specific.
And this, I would say this is worse than the current one because this doesn't tell you how you go about measuring the 15%, whereas the previous one at least told you how you went about measuring
Yeah, I think
the
that
15%.
I think the way it's done currently is good. I think it's doing its job for town. I think since that's been passed, there's only been a handful of slope driveways built. Developers have figured out how to maximize things without needing to do that. I don't really see any reason for change at this point. I would recommend no action. on this.
I agree with you.
I'd
I mean,
recommend
I-
no action, not because of what you said, I agree with it, it's part of it, but also because exceed a 15% downslope for the entire length of the driveway means you basically need to measure
Mhm.
the entire length of the driveway.
Yeah,
see
and the
what
risk of
slope
pushing
is.
back the house and making things
You
unbuildable
know,
is too
so,
high.
so I would say.
And I
no
think there
action.
are perhaps other ways of addressing the safety issue, which was cited as the reason for this, but we can't do them within the scope that we're given
Yeah, if
in
the scope,
Article
if the scope was
25.
broader, I think we could do what needed to be done.
Okay.
Another example of maybe they should have come to us.
Okay. Motion, no action on Article 25.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we are tabling only Article 20 on Monday night, seeking advice of town council. We made it through everything else. Congratulations.
Great
Yes.
job.
Good job. Thank you very much. Really did what we were supposed to do.
So,
Are we meeting,
Yeah.
where are we meeting?
you mean on Monday night?
Yeah.
Monday night is back in your regular
Back at home.
haunts.
All right. Because I made a trip through the senior center over here.
Sorry to everybody who may have done
I
that.
have a few wording sort of changes, not substantive, that I'll have to figure out how to get to you.
So I'm afraid that I may need to ask us to have an additional meeting because we have to post the agenda for Monday's meeting tomorrow. And what we had hoped to do was get through everything and draft the report to town meeting. And that has to be posted with the agenda. There's no other way to do that. So I won't be able to do that all tomorrow, clearly, and you haven't finished voting. So if you're going to finish, we can start drafting the report. We can, and we'll put that on the agenda, but it won't be able to be shared, just given the timing, clearly, for April 1st. So I'd like to suggest that we have to meet on probably April 8th, if possible. I don't know if it's
What day is that?
possible. That's a
Monday.
Monday.
The following
It's just
Monday.
another
Fine.
Monday.
Yeah, I can meet,
Just-
I can meet on
I think I
April.
can do the like,
Because I would add other nights, but we have April 3rd and 4th are already outreach meetings.
Oh, I forgot about those.
Yeah,
When do we go back to our regular,
your regular life.
no, I was talking about
July.
regular project review stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
If town meeting ends. May 20th.
Okay.
That's your next date for a public hearing.
And there are projects
Well, Sunnyside would be back.
and anything else?
Oh, the Sunnyside's coming back?
Yes, actually, there would be one more coming to you, probably on May 20th, but this is not definitive. But it's
Okay.
108 Summer Street, which is the Food Link property.
Nothing too far off subject, but what happened to that lobster place?
Gone.
It's not coming back.
Yeah, I know. We approved everything. and then
Twice,
it
or 3
disappeared.
times.
Yeah, unfortunately.
it's a shame.
That was not a sign issue.
Did not,
That killed
did not
it.
move forward,
No.
and that had nothing to do with this board.
Yeah, probably shouldn't talk about it.
Can I ask
No,
a,
no, that's not
Okay.
something.
can I ask a more controversial question, which you may not want to answer?
Can I just be confirmed for sure? So April 8th is okay?
I
I
would,
just will check on the location of that meeting. No.
I would just request to have the most minimal agenda possible.
Yeah, I'm
that
just going
night.
to try to make it about the report to town meeting. So you'll have, or basically it would just be, you're just going to vote on the report and make any, admit. I think we did this previously, last year,
Yeah.
maybe.
I think we did.
So
Yeah,
we can't do it on the 1st. It would
Okay.
be heroic, but unlikely.
So I read something about marijuana shops wanting to come to town.
Okay.
Anything worth sharing at this point?
I don't have anything to share about that, no.
Okay.
No, and the first step in the process was going to the select board, which occurred, and the select board is now devising a mechanism for entities to apply, and they've, I believe, this past Monday night talked about that application process, but I don't know if there will be another meeting in the future to continue that discussion and then discuss the outcome.
So this
as
is
well.
far away before we're going to get to...
There's nothing currently on the
Yeah.
table. No.
Okay.
You still have to go through us though, right?
Well, they would, after they
Yes.
get the determination from the select board, then they would come here and the Board of Health, of course, as well, to meet their regulations.
Yeah.
All right.
Motion adjourned?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Great work.